Yeah, Raisha's going to do it. And I'll ask him to join
Jeanette, are
us
we
up
live?
here at this point, right?
I don't put my phone in.
Oh.
I believe we are.
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Could you maybe, you know how we used to have the table turned so it was partially toward the applicants and?
No problem.
Thank you.
He's going to need
And
help.
Rich, you can come up here.
Going this way, angle?
Yeah, perpendicular to the dais.
Oh, what happened to your hand?
No, you got
Oh, but then don't do it. Don't do it. You don't need that problem.
No.
Good.
Cat there.
Yes.
I'm in the panel, hold on.
No, no.
I thought I
Catherine,
was in the penalty box.
Catherine,
There's
you can go
another
down
one
with Dave.
there, huh?
Hold on, where's Rich gonna sit?
he's up here.
Oh, he's up there? Okay, great. Never mind that.
Good.
The other guy looks worse.
No.
Would you like me to wait on you first on the agenda, but I can wait if you want. You do all the announcements and roll call.
Okay, yes, because we have some other things first.
Catherine, you're down there now.
I know now.
I know.
Raisha, we ready?
Yes.
Okay, the mic is working. Yeah.
Good evening. This is the Township of Sparta Planning Board. We're meeting at Sparta Township Municipal Building, courtroom, 7 p.m. It is Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. The time is 7:14 p.m. The Open Public Meetings Act statement, adequate notice of this public meeting was given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Formal action may or may not be taken. We will now stand to salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, would you do the roll call, please?
Sure.
And also maybe just mention that this is being live streamed at www.youtube.com/@SpartaTWP.
Christine Dunbar,
Here.
Ernie Raxat,
Here.
Robert Bleakley,
Here.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Here.
Chairwoman Joan Furman,
Here.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Here.
Ron Day,
Here.
Jeanette Burke,
Here.
Celeste Luciano,
Here.
Brian Zimmerman.
Here.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make one change to the agenda. Ramez and Company asked for a postponement, an adjournment and postponement until March 19th, so they will not be heard tonight. And we have one other point of business we'd like to take care of before we begin.
Madam Chair, before we move off of that point, can I just make a more
Yes, of
formal
course.
announcement to the people? So if there's any member of the public here for Ramez and Company at 61 Sparta Avenue property, for that application, it is not being heard this evening. It is now going to be heard on March 19th in this room, commencing at 7 p.m., and there'll be no further notices from the applicant.
Okay, thank you. The next thing, which is not on the agenda, we did have some scheduling issues that came into play, and Mr. Aller is here with us today, Rich Aller, and we will, if somebody would make a formal motion to have him as our conflict attorney.
I'll make the motion that Richard Aller be our conflict attorney.
Okay, second, please.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes.
Robert Bleakley,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Ernie Bagsat,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Look
Much
forward to
appreciated.
working with you.
Thank you, me too.
Okay, so the first thing we have going into regular business, the town council had asked us to take a look at 2 ordinances for consistency review with the master plan. The first one is ordinance 25-04, amending chapter 18 entitled Comprehensive Land Management Code to amend portions of section 18-4.36 entitled PDRM-2, Plan Development and Resource Management Area. So let's take that one first, and I'd like to ask Catherine she did the consistency review for us, and if she would please give us her advice.
Thank you, Chairman Furman. So this ordinance, if you recall, the board referred it to the council. So this is actually an extra layer, an extra step in that after first reading, it came back to the board. But this was an ordinance that the ordinance subcommittee had put together. And it was, we described it last year when we had a few meetings on it, when we went through the draft of it. But essentially what it does is it amends the PDRM2 zone to have the same standards, development standards and building coverage standards that were amended by ordinance 2201 for the PDRM1 zone and the ED zone. So many of the standards are related to warehouse and storage uses. They provide higher levels of requirements that otherwise were not in that ordinance that deal with development standards. We did them before or concurrently with the state, the NJ Office of Planning Advocacy and the State Planning Commission put together a warehouse siting guideline and talked about a lot of those standards. We happened to be doing it at the same time when we did Ordinance 2201, but this essentially will bring the PDRM2 zone, which is very similar to the PDRM1 and ED zone, into complete kind of consistency with each other. As far as the master plan consistency review, what I did was I went through the 2011 master plan amendment, which was the PDRM master plan amendment, which essentially was a recommendation to create those zones. Before 2011, they did not exist. And then to look at the most recent master plan reexamination report, which was done in 2020, to ensure or to look and see how the new ordinance compares to the master plan to make sure that they're consistent. In looking at those documents, I came to the conclusion, and I recommend that the board find this ordinance is consistent with the master plan and refer that back to the council with that finding.
Okay, thank you. Just FYI, this is portion not open to the public. This is only for the board. So I'd like to maybe start down with Christine. Do you have any questions or comments?
I do not, thank you.
Celeste?
No, thank you.
Rob?
Nope.
Rob?
No, thank you.
Mark?
No.
Ron?
No.
Ron?
No.
Nope. Oh, that was easy. So we make a motion to approve this and send comments back to the town council?
Yes. And there's kind of two-way, I don't know what the history is in Sparta, how you do that here, but you can either do it just by letter, short letter, or by resolution. The letter is probably going to be faster.
Right.
Yeah.
So would anybody make a motion to send a letter to the town council approving the consistency review?
I'll make a motion on the letter to the town council, approving the
Okay.
consistency review.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes.
Robert Bleakley,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Ernie Ragstat,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. Okay, thank you. The next one is ordinance 25-06, amending Chapter 18 entitled Comprehensive Land Management Code to amend portions of Section 18-4.31A entitled Planned Commercial Economic Development Zone. Catherine?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave, did you have any comments?
No, I did not, Madam Chair and board members. I did review Catherine's memo that she sent out, and I was in agreement with what she came up with.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
And I'll
ma'am.
remember to ask you this time.
That's all right.
This was an amendment to the PCED zone, which exists today. This is ordinance 25-06. In this consistency review, there was a master plan amendment for the PCED that was done in 2018, and then the same reexamination report from 2020 was reviewed. So the 2018 master plan amendment effectuated or recommended that the PCD zone be adopted. It didn't exist before then. And that was eventually adopted thereafter in 2018, I believe. And this included a number of goals, general goals for the zone. And I won't go through them, they're in the report. But it also included a study area. So it included what they are now zoned as a study area to describe some of the environmentally sensitive features, so existence of wetlands, that it was in the Germany Flats Aquifer area, and that it was in, most of the properties were somehow in different tiers of the critical wellhead protection area. So there's a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, which is basically the distance from the wellhead area. And it noted those as sensitivities in that any future development should be careful about those things and should also have certain stormwater management and design that ensures that the wellhead continues to be protected and that continues to move things away from the wellhead so that's not flowing into there. The amendment also made a number of proposed land use recommendations with the permitted uses listed in that document. The conditional uses, there's a typo on page 3, I apologize, in that document, and then prohibited uses. Those were all recommendations by the master plan amendment. So a master plan amendment doesn't effectuate, doesn't put together an ordinance, it just makes recommendations. And it likewise made amendments to the 1984 land use element of the master plan in that it replaced pages. And that was something that happened in the PDRM zone as well. But every time that a new zone was added, it would basically revise and replace the land use element that talks about all the different zones because it's adding another one. And in that section, it also includes what the purpose of the zone was. And that it's pretty short, so I will add that the purpose of the zone was to permit development of large tracts of land along Route 15 in a planned setting. A planned development will prevent an adverse impact on the community and enhance the existing light industrial uses and improve the free flow of traffic to meet the State Access Management Code. And then it's a June 2018, which is included as part of the master plan. The master plan reexamination report included a few things that were relevant to the PCD zone. And the reexamination report really only looks at what were recommendations in the past, what has changed at the state, local, and regional level. So it's an assessment of all that at a point in time. And then looks at if any recommendations are still valid, need to be reevaluated, need to be pushed out, and any new recommendations that reexamination report makes. And so it notes that since 2018, the township completed the ordinance 18-12 to amend the zone map and to include PCD. So it confirmed that the PCD zone was completed and was adopted by ordinance, essentially. It also noted a prior recommendation about traffic in the town center and the Route 15 corridor and made notes about the traffic and how it should be handled in the future, especially by boards and also by a circulation plan element through traffic studies and a more robust look at traffic because it was noted as an issue, as a focal point. And then also for a prior recommendation that should be reevaluated, there was a recommendation from the past that said the board recommends the adoption of a master plan amendment to amend the ED zone and the PCD zone to the PCED zone, and it notes that this was implemented. And then finally, the last time the PCD zone was amended was by Ordinance 22-21, which was limited to just the prohibition of distribution centers, fulfillment centers, and parcel hubs for that zone. That was the only change made to the zone at that time. So from a consistency perspective, looking at all of that information and comparing it to the ordinance, the biggest or the first thing that's really different is that the purpose was amended in 2506. So the purpose statement that I read before, there was an additional kind of to that paragraph, which included that, however, since the initial purpose of the PCED zone was contemplated, the Route 15 corridor in the vicinity of the PCED zone has become overwhelmed by high-intensity commercial and residential uses and severe traffic congestion and sprawl. Therefore, a restriction of further development in the PCED zone will prevent any further adverse impacts on the community and enhance the once rural character of the area, while not exacerbating the free flow of traffic on Route 15 to meet the state NJDOT Highway Access Management Code. The next change that was made was that the permitted uses were changed in the PCD zone from what they exist today. So they were adopted exactly as recommended in the master plan element, and they were then changed or proposed to be changed by 2506 to agricultural uses on 5 acres or more and outdoor recreation uses except those included as a conditional use or prohibited use. It also removed the existing conditional uses and added a number of prohibited uses to the existing list for the zone, which were largely related to uses that would have had adverse effects on the environment. So it talked about things that had certain chemicals or stuff like that, or as uses that are prohibited. It also reduced the impervious lot coverage allowance from 40% to 30%, and then included a number of additional design standards and provisions required to impact studies. The existing architectural and design standards were preserved in the ordinance, and enhanced provisions related to landscaping, pedestrian safety, and building masses were added to those design standards as well. In looking at this ordinance, I think I looked back at the purpose of the 2018 master plan amendment, which talked about permitting development of large tracts along Route 15. It talked about them specifically in a planned setting. So in the planning world, that means like kind of an overall scheme like they did across the street in North Village, and to prevent those adverse impacts on the community. This purpose statement specifically did not include those specific uses. It didn't say retail uses. It didn't say industrial uses. It didn't say anything specific. It just generally said that a planned development would help achieve that. And then I just wanted to note that the 2 uses that are permitted by Ordinance 25-06 are 2 of the 16 uses that were recommended by the master plan element. So they're not different. It's not like they said, here's 16 uses that's recommended and we chose a completely different one. There are 2 uses that were stated in the master plan amendment. And then in looking at the goals that I didn't state, but I included in the report, I just went through to see which ones lined up with this ordinance and with this ordinance directly, which ones aren't directly furthered by it on its face, but could be realized, in the future, depending on what kind of development or what kind of use was there in the future, because they were more design related. They were talking about like curb cuts on Route 15. That's not something this ordinance really talked about. And then finally, ones that just weren't furthered by this and were just kind of inconsistent with it like that. So the conclusion of this is that while many of the overarching goals of the PCD zone were not violated by Ordinance 2506, the explicit statement in the purpose within the ordinance does differ from the initial contemplation of the PCD zone. And it makes it clear why it's looking to restrict further zoning and permitted uses, which is it gives reasons that necessarily aren't within the master plan. They talk about them being new reasons, and they're just separate from what was included in the master plan in 2018 and discussed in the 2020 re-exam. So it doesn't, as I said before, the ordinance doesn't introduce any new uses beyond what the PCD zone a master plan amendment had contemplated, but it does reduce those uses. And so in what I looked at also was that the PCD master plan amendment did recognize context, did recognize environmental features, sensitivities, and still made recommendations for a mixture of different permitted and conditional uses at a variety of intensities within a planned setting. And so ultimately, it kind of skirted the line of whether it was consistent in some ways, but inconsistent in other ways. Largely, that purpose statement is inconsistent. And the MLUL does indicate that the planning board, in its consistency review, should look whether in whole or in part an ordinance is consistent with the master plan. And for the reasons stated in my analysis, I believe that with the basis of the purpose statement is inconsistent. And thus, the findings of this were that the board, my recommendation is that the board should transmit back to the council that this ordinance is in part inconsistent with the master plan. What you can include, what the MLUL allows you to include is you can include recommendations to the council of how the ordinance could be changed to be consistent with the master plan if you think that's achievable. Or you can just transmit back to them that it is inconsistent for the reasons included here.
And what recommendations would you give of what could be changed to make it consistent? Just the purpose statement?
I think the purpose statement being the most obvious one, yes.
Okay. I'm just catching up writing. Okay, Dave, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing further.
Okay, anybody from the board?
Dave, do you agree with Catherine's assessment?
As far as the inconsistency, yes.
Anybody else?
I've got two questions and need a little help, a little guidance on one. So when they deleted removed some of the permitted uses, one of those permitted uses was planned developments. So does this ordinance, the way it's worded now, allow for planned developments? Or is it only for separate lots within the PCED zone?
So if you look at the way under permitted uses, it says the following uses are permitted in the planned commercial economic development in a planned development. So it still
Okay.
talks about a planned development.
Okay.
And so those uses are technically required to be in that.
Okay.
To be
So
permitted.
the answer is it still allows for planned developments?
Correct.
Okay. So the other question I had is relative to down in the zone right now, there is an existing planned development. I believe that includes a restaurant, warehouse, and some other shops. So would this, if this was approved, does this make those existing businesses non-conforming? And if so, if one of the owners wanted to add a new tenant, how difficult would that be?
So I believe that if this was adopted, it would basically create what that's called a pre-existing non-conforming use. If that is the case, then any expansion, any change to those, or that's viewed as an expansion, would go before the zoning board as what's called a D2 use variance, which is an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use. So they would have, the track history is basically like, right now, if let's say hypothetically the ordinance was adopted, at that point in time, then they become non-conforming uses. So they wouldn't have a hard burden to prove that the zoning made them non-conforming. The other thing is, if they were approved by a zoning board, by a use variance at any point in time, then they would still have to go back before the zoning board for any use variance for what you just indicated for that scenario.
So a new tenant application would have to go to the zoning board if it was for one of the uses that was removed?
If it was removed or replaced.
So let's say restaurants or office spaces. Those are two existing. So let's say that they wanted to change the tenant. What would the process be?
Oh, the tenancy, If they're not changing the building, then that's not a D2.
Do they have a tenancy ordinance here, a change of tenant?
I don't believe we do.
Okay. So if you, I would think if you're just changing the tenant and there's no exterior modifications,
Yep.
then it doesn't have to, I have to look at your ordinance frankly, but I don't see that coming back.
Okay.
So if there's a change in signage for whatever
You
reason,
can change the words, you can't change the sign, right? So you don't regulate the letters, right?
The extent of the
well,
sign. so
I'm
they-
just
Right.
talking
Yeah.
about, let's say you had, somebody who had a sign that was originally Mr. Smith's, and now the new tenant is Mr. and Mrs. Smith, so now it's 16 inches outside the size of the normal, of what the
Still going to be
ordinance
in
would
the same
dictate.
frame though, right? It's just yeah, I mean, the sign's still the same, it's the same, 50 square foot sign, whatever. It's just the name is changing. Doesn't come here.
Okay. One more other question. So let's say for argument's sake, there's an act of God or a fire. Would the current owners be capable of rebuilding under, if this ordinance were adopted?
So the way the zoning code reads right now, only a handful of zones include an explicit statement about rebuilding. We don't have any other provisions about non-conforming uses rebuilding, whether it be fire or act of God or whatever. We don't have that provision in the ordinance right now.
Okay, so because that's not outlined, does that mean that there would be an issue if they needed to rebuild, or?
They would have to apply for a zoning permit, and if if the zoning officer says it's denied, then they'd come before the zoning board as a expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use or new, depending on how badly it was damaged,
Yeah, I was going to say, the zoning officer might look at the extent of the damage and determine that he had to come back as a D2, not here, right? It's going to go to the Board of Adjustment. And he would have to go back maybe as a D1 if it's
If the-
not a permitted use. It might
Yeah.
be a D1 then.
if it was totally
Right,
destroyed.
totally, total destruction, he's going back, going to the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, is there anyone who would make a recommendation to write a letter to send this to the town council with perhaps recommending how the language could be changed to make it consistent by redoing the purpose statement? No motion?
I make a motion that we send a letter back to town council indicating that this ordinance is not consistent with the master plan.
I'll second it.
Just a point of clarification if I can. So the letter would just say it's inconsistent and wouldn't make recommendations? Is that what we're saying, Mark?
Correct.
Okay,
Huh?
thank you.
And so the board knows, not to interrupt the motion, the council does not have to, if the planning board makes recommendations, the council does not have to change anything. It's just a recommendation by the board. So if you wanted to include it, the council does not have to listen to that recommendation.
They can adopt the ordinance by majority vote.
Okay, so that's not important.
They-
Okay,
Right.
Basically, just kicking it back.
Right.
okay, so we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Sure. Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes.
Robert Bleakley,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Ernie Ragstat,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Autumn,
Otto, yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. Thank you for your very thorough reports.
You're welcome.
All right, we're moving on to the public hearing portion of it. The first one is Planning Board number 24-726, Lake Mohawk MMA. Would you please come to the table? And just by way of background for everybody, this applicant had come to the minor site plan subcommittee several months ago, but was referred to the full planning board due to parking. So we're going to address that piece of it.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, distinguished members of the board. My name is Todd Hooker from the firm Baskin Hooker right down the street. I represent Lake Mohawk MMA.
One point of clarification, I'm sorry, do we need to swear?
No, he's the attorney.
Okay, thank you.
If I'm not sworn in, doesn't mean I'm going to lie to you.
He's also not giving testimony. It's just going to tell you what we're about to hear, perhaps. Yes.
Could you just use the microphone?
Microphone.
Yeah, we just need to use the mic for the live stream. Thank you.
I have two witnesses tonight. I represent the applicant who's going to be the tenant, and that's Mr. Frank Kerner. He's the owner of Lake Mohawk MMA. And then the owner of the property, Mr. Dick Wilson. And the property is the Upper Lake Plaza. I'm sure if you've been in Sparta for 2 minutes, you know it well. It's been around for a long time, and he's going to tell us all about it. We're here for a site plan waiver because it's a pre-existing building with a pre-existing parking lot and a parking variance because it's been there for 40 years and the rules have changed, and apparently we need more parking now than they did 40 years ago, based on the ordinance. But we're going to have some testimony to explain that in fact is not the case. And no need to hear from me any further. I'm going to bring on Mr. Dick Wilson. We'll get him sworn in, and we can talk about the parking first, and then we'll bring in Mr. Kerner, and he can talk about his business and what he wants to do. And hopefully we can be out of here in pretty short order. Mr. Wilson. Come on up here, and you'll be sworn in to promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
So, Mr. Wilson, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes.
And your name for the record, please?
William Richard Wilson, Jr.
Thank you, sir.
Now, Mr. Wilson, you own either individually or through some entity the property known as the Upper Lake Plaza?
Yes,
Right, and is it owned through an entity?
yes,
What's the name of the entity?
Upper Lake Plaza, LLC or P or one of those things.
All right, so,
Feel free to sit.
yeah, you can sit down. We can sit down. Now, how long have you owned that property, Mr. Wilson?
I think I bought it in '83, so it's been a little over 40 years,
And when was it developed into what exists now as the Upper Lake Plaza?
in the mid-'80s,
In the mid-'80s, okay, so almost 40 years?
correct.
All right. So as the owner of the property, are you familiar with the parking situation that exists at the Upper Lake Plaza?
Yes.
How many
Could you just move
spots?
the microphone a little closer? I don't know if it's picking up for the live stream.
Better?
Yes, thank you.
How many parking spaces are there at the Upper Lake Plaza?
There's 101.
Okay. I know in the planning report there was, I think the drawing we submitted may have only shown, Mr. Wilson was out there counting the spots earlier today, and you confirmed there's 101?
Correct.
All right. And those spots have been there for how long?
Close to 40 years,
Since the property was developed?
pretty much. Yes, we did add an upper lot at somewheres along the line. I forget just when that was, but it's been this way for quite some time now.
All right, for more than 20 years?
Yes.
Now, in the planning report, there's some suggestion that 127 spots may be required under the existing ordinance. And depending on how many square feet the pizza place uses or how many office spaces there might be more or less. But at the end of the day, how many spots on average are taken on a daily basis, Mr. Wilson, based on your personal observations over the last 40 years?
Less than 50.
Okay. So of the 101 parking spots, your personal observations have been that on an average daily basis, 50 or less spots are used.
That's correct.
Have you ever seen the lot when it's completely full and there's nowhere to park?
No,
And how many, is the property completely full of tenants now?
besides this empty space, we have one that's kind of in limbo right now, but all the rest are filled.
And how big is the space that's in limbo?
I think it's 1,300 square feet.
Is that an office space?
Yes,
Okay. And is that on the second floor
actually, it's on the third floor.
or the third floor? I didn't
Yes.
realize there was a third floor.
A lot of folks don't.
All right, so other than the space that Mr. Kerner is going to be leasing from you to open up his MMA studio, there's one other space of about 1,300 square feet of office space that's on the third floor that's not leased.
That's correct.
All right. Other than that, the property's completely full.
Yes.
How many tenants is that?
I believe I have maybe 20 or 21, something of that nature. Let me think I have a report here. Like 22? That's pretty close.
All right. And those tenants operate during normal business hours and sometimes beyond normal business hours, like the pizza place, for example, might be open later, correct?
That's correct.
And notwithstanding the 22 or so tenants you have, it's your testimony that there's never a lack of parking at the property, correct?
That's correct. We've never had a problem with lack of spaces.
Look, I see you have some notes there about some space usage you have in your hand there. Could you mind telling the board what those notes are?
We've checked the parking at least 4 times in the last couple of weeks. And like I said, there's 101 total. And we tried to do it during busy times. We got 54 cars at one time at 3:30 in the afternoon. We got 37 cars at 10:30 in the morning. And we got 35 cars at 1:30 in the afternoon. And today, at 3:15, there were 44 cars. So it's seldom is there more than 60 cars there.
So we have 101 spots, correct?
Correct.
And just based on your observations over the past couple of weeks, there's never more than 60 cars, is that correct?
That's correct.
And beyond the last couple of weeks, you've observed this property for almost 40 years, correct?
That's correct.
And there's never been a parking issue, correct?
Well, only human parking issues, not with cars.
Right, not for a lack of spaces.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. In terms of the signage, there's an existing sign box on the property, correct?
Correct.
And that's not going to change, correct?
That's correct.
The only thing that's going to change is the letterings that's in the sign box?
That's correct.
So the sign box that's there has been there for over a decade or more, correct?
Yes,
So the sign box itself, the size of the sign isn't changing, just the letters are changing.
that's correct.
I don't know if I have any other questions for Mr. Wilson, maybe the board does, or the planner or the engineer.
I have one question. The unit you're talking about, was that, what was formerly a dance studio?
At one time, it was a dance studio, and then the dance studio moved down a couple doors to larger space.
So when it was Dance Dimensions, that's the one you're talking about?
That's correct.
Before that, it was a karate studio, correct?
At one time, years ago, it was, and he needed more space. Went to the other side of town and ended up buying the building.
Good for him.
Thank you. So I had put together like a rough estimate of what the parking requirements be, just because this is a site plan waiver. I know it was before the minor site plan subcommittee where the parking variance was kind of identified. So can you confirm that the number provided is accurate? The estimation is accurate?
I think Mr. Wilson testified that you actually went and counted the spots. and
Oh,
it's 101.
I'm sorry, that's fine, I appreciate that. I mean more the parking requirements based upon the ordinance. So, you know, I didn't go into the pizzeria to see what the service area was. I may have overestimated or underestimated what the parking requirement would be for that. This is just an exercise in how much parking's required under the ordinance.
Did you go in and measure the pizza station, how many square feet it is?
I know the tenant space is approximately 1,800 square feet, but I don't know if they have a seating area inside. It looks like mostly.
Yes, they do.
They do have a seating area and,
Yes.
okay. And is it mostly, I know it has counter service.
Correct.
And I don't know how big the kitchen is, but I approximated a little over half of the space generates the parking requirement because it does not include service areas and it does not include kitchen
That's
areas.
probably close to accurate.
Okay. And as far as the upper level office spaces, was that approximately 11,000 square feet or so on the second floor? We had the ground floor tenant spaces provided to us, so I was able to calculate those, but with the way the building is articulated, it was hard to tell if the spaces on the upper floor were bigger or smaller.
Now, what specifically is your question?
How much office space is on the second floor approximately, or how much tenant space is on the second floor?
Okay, just 1 second.
And the reason why I'm asking this question is that I want to make sure the parking variance that they are seeking tonight is accurate. In the case that there's another tenant, minor site plan down the road, and for whatever reason, a parking variance gets identified again, or a parking generation for that use gets identified again, I want to make sure that this will cover you. So if we undercount the parking need, if the board does approve it, it could hurt the future interpretation by professionals in the township with a future application. So I just want to make sure it's accurate and it'll protect, the future tenants.
There's approximately 7,500 to 8,000 square feet on the second floor.
Okay. So in the case of my estimation, I overestimated how much. So let's say, which isn't
How about the third floor?
problematic. Is-
And the third floor,
Okay.
there's a little over between 6,000 and 6,500 on the third floor.
So about 14.5 altogether, office space?
Plus on the first floor,
But that's not office space, that's retail.
okay. Yes,
Sorry, again, that total for the office space is what?
14.5 he's estimating based on his little cheat sheet he has here.
Okay, so the required parking's a little more than what's in Catherine's memo, right? Are
Correct.
you-
It's approximately 145.
Yeah.
Is it? You were probably very close. That's why I should have trusted that. Okay, so I think 144, 145 is probably the accurate number for the variance relief. So if 101 spaces, which is what they have and isn't changing, the parking variance would be from the 145 spaces to allow the 101 spaces. That's the only question I had for this witness.
Madam Chair and board members, again, just referring back to the report I prepared dated December 11th, 2024, again, with the site plan waiver, this is an existing building on an existing developed site. With regards to any changes with regards to stormwater or lighting or anything like that, that's already in place. The one thing I did note was with regards to water, they are in the town water system. But in addition to that, I remember a few years ago, Mr. Wilson had a site plan in before the board for a substantial upgrade to the septic disposal system. So that was taken care of as far as this building goes. With regards to the signage, I understand what they're talking about. Is the signage a box sign or is it individual letters?
Individual letters.
That's what I thought, just so that was clear on the record on that one. And again, with regards to the main issue of parking, on my report, I had, I counted on the site plan document that was submitted 98 parking spaces. Mr. Wilson confirmed 101. I had estimated 144, so we're right in the same ballpark as far as that goes if the board decides to grant any variance from the parking requirement. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it to the dais. Jeanette, you want to start?
I just want to make a comment, Mr. Wilson. I've spent, over the years, I've been a resident of Sparta for 44 years, and I've spent many hours in your building, and I love it. It's a beautiful building to be a part of this town.
Well, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
You never had a parking issue, right?
I've never had, I still to this day, I visit your building at least once a week, and I never have an issue, so.
You may
That's
not
even with
get
the
right in
UPS
front of
store
the
around
store,
Christmas.
But you'll find a space.
That's, even with UPS around Christmas, I've never had an issue.
That's the busiest the lot gets, Christmas.
Yeah, so.
January.
Yeah, the reason I had asked which unit it was is, you know, my daughters who are much older now did go to that Dance Dimensions there, and I do remember never having a parking issue. And I think that's a similar use to this as far as the number of people are
It
going to
is
come in,
similar,
maybe
yes.
even more than because the parents all stick around while their kids are in dance class, you know, as opposed to drop off.
There was also, at one point, I don't believe it's there anymore, there was a yoga studio upstairs as well, so.
That's correct.
So I think you're fine with all of this.
That's it.
Thank you. Ron?
Just for clarification, so the dance studio is still there, just in a different suite, or have they moved out?
It's in a different suite.
Okay, thanks. So when you look at your testimony about the lot being like 60 cars or something like that, that includes the dance studio being there? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
And just for the record, could you go over the hours of operation and when? Yes, okay. Then I'm going to skip. Go ahead.
Let me say, just in that regard, like the dance studio has different hours,
Yes.
which kind of helps balance everything out. And I believe the karate situation is similar to that, in that the hours are late afternoon, evening, weekends, as opposed to 9 to 5 businesses.
Okay, thank you.
No questions.
No questions. I'll just add Mr. Zimmerman's comments on appreciating the building I live, or the complex I live right around the corner. Been there over 10 years and have gotten pizza and stuff from there for quite a while longer than that. So, yeah, thanks for keeping it up. And I guess I was only curious about the upper parking lot. Is that the one to the left, if you're looking at it?
Yes.
And then, what's the relationship with Lake Mohawk? Is there a relationship with Upper Lake Plaza? And are you a member?
We're a member of the Lake Mohawk community.
Okay, so then but you're in the C1 zone. Okay, so then the tenants are members by virtue of,
I believe they have certain rights because they are a tenant.
okay,
But,
yeah,
it's never really been,
I was always curious. I saw some stuff with Fran Smith way back in the day, but, all right, thank you.
Just reiterating a thank you. I'm at the UPS store pretty often, and there really isn't an
I
issue.
hope you're closer in line than I was.
And
the other day.
honestly, that's even with them sometimes blocking off that 1 to 3 spots right in front for the
Beware
trucks.
those Amazon boxes, that's all I can say.
So, but yes, thank you. No questions for you, but thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate the stores that you have there. Use them frequently. No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We're going to bring Mr. Kerner up now. Frank.
Should we hear from members, questions for the public to this witness? Anybody from the public? Thank you.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And your name, please?
Frank Joseph Kerner Jr.
I'm sorry, a little louder.
There's a
Frank Joseph Kerner Jr.
And would you spell your last name, please?
Kerner.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kerner, could you tell the board a little bit about your background, how long you've been teaching MMA, where you had your studio previously, and why you're moving to Lake Mohawk?
All right, I've been in martial arts pretty much my whole life. I started helping out in '97, teaching in Elizabeth. I had a gym in Franklin and called Enforcers BJJ, and I live right around the corner. I'm by Lake Lenape, so I wanted something closer to my house so I could see the family more and the kids, and just in between classes I could go back home and everything, so it'd be easier. So I spoke to Mr. Wilson and we agreed on it, the spot. So I put in notice for my other gym and they sold the building. And then when I didn't get this variance approved the first time, the parking, so I had to close my other gym down and just been waiting for this spot to come along.
That's been what, since July or August?
We started the process in June and officially got to it in July. So it's been a little bit.
So what are your hours of operation going to be for your gym at the Upper Lake Plaza?
All right, I don't have definite hours yet, but most of the classes are gonna be from 5 to 9, the latest
PM?
PM. During the daytime, I might have a morning class if there's demand, maybe a 6 a.m. class. I was thinking maybe if I could get enough people, a 9 a.m. class for mothers. You know, when they drop off their kids at school, they could come and train, learn some self-defense, and get a workout. And possibly a 12 o'clock class, but I don't know because it's not a popular time, especially in this area where most people commute. It's not a great time, so I don't think that's going to happen at all. But I just wanted to bring it up to you just in case later you guys will be like, hey, you never mentioned that time. So I just wanted to say that possibly down the road if there's a demand for it. Right now there's not, but so most of the time it's going to be 5 to 9. On the weekends, I have to see that if there's going to be any demand also, because my other gym in Franklin, nobody on Saturday showed up, and I had like 4 people on Sunday, but yeah, it wasn't very popular. So I have to see here what demand is with Saturday and possibly Sunday as well.
So you're asking the board for some flexibility on the hours, as early as
Yeah.
6 and as late as 9 at the last, when did the last class start?
The last class would be 8 o'clock to 9.
Okay. And then potentially, if there's some demand and you can build the business, you'd like to maybe have a class at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., and 12 p.m., and then the bulk would be between 5 and 9.
Correct.
Okay. So you're asking the board for some flexibility on the hours.
Exactly.
And we, based on Mr. Wilson's testimony in terms of the parking, if it's a 6 a.m. class, there shouldn't be a problem. Or if there's a 12 p.m. class, there shouldn't be a problem, correct?
No.
How,
The
how
only
many,
time,
how many students do you have per class?
little under 10 usually.
Is that because of the space restrictions in terms of the rolling around and the requirements?
Well, one, I'm picky with the people I have. So I like to have a certain group of people that are, you know, respectable. They want to train and they're just good people, you know. So I pretty much do an interview. I don't let everybody in my gym because I'm not looking for bad apples. You know, I try to keep it more of a family environment. And
So class size would be around 10?
yeah, on a good day.
Probably smaller though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, usually like 6 to 8.
So we have the hours and the size of the classes. In terms of your evening classes, do people come and park and stay, or do they drop off their
Usually,
their MMA people and then go to do something else?
well, usually for parents, they drop their kids off because it's a little break. You know, they get their 45 minutes or an hour break. So I would have 2 parents, 3 parents the most, but most of the time it's just drop off and pick up. You know, it works out well too for the dance studio. They could drop their kids off. One kid could do the jiu-jitsu, the other kid could do their dance, so we could work something with that too. And I know their studios drop off too.
I don't have any other questions for Mr. Kerner, maybe the planner and the engineer?
Thank you for your testimony. You've mentioned that you have mostly classes lined up. Do you have anything more free-form? Do you have like normal regulars that train there outside of the class setting?
Oh, no.
Okay, it's just classes really that you run.
Yeah, once in a blue moon I do a private lesson, but not really because they're not worth it unless it's something that was like an hour before, an hour after.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I don't have anything else.
And just along those lines, you don't have any planned competitions where you'd have people show up to observe competitions or anything like that?
No, it's illegal.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's it. Maybe this time we'll start down with Christine.
Yeah, I think that, I think that you answered the question that our engineer asked, and that is if you have like a recital day or something where parents come in and they watch. And
We have promotion days, but no recital. They just practice all the time, you know.
what is a promotion day?
So there's a belt system, and like once a year, twice a year, it depends. They'll get their new color belt. So it just goes by colors and ranks. So once or twice a year, you do a small promotion, and you know they get their little belt and you know take
Okay,
pictures.
and friends and family come and watch as they get their belt.
Family, but not really
Family.
friends. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small thing. It's not like the kids have their in jiu-jitsu. The kids never get to a black belt because it's not real. You know, so they keep it low. There's like the highest level kid belt is a green, and then they go to the adult belts after. So it's never like this big thing where they get their black belt and it's a big ceremony. You know, from once they turn 16, they get their blue belt. Now you're an official adult. You know, now you got to work your way back up.
Okay, so it's a family, one family, or I'm just trying to visualize what your promotion day would be like in terms of volume of people.
Oh, it won't be that big. Usually I don't promote every kid at once too, because I go by different standards for kids.
Sure.
You know, it's not like where I'm out there to collect money, you know, charging everybody. That's what different martial arts do. That's how they make their money on the side. But in jiu-jitsu, we don't charge for promotion, you earn them. So that's a big thing too. It's not like a cash grab.
Yeah, well, children are going to develop their skills at different paces also, I would
Exactly.
think, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
No questions. Thank you.
Sorry, I think you said this, but how many promotion days per year? If it's staggered or if it's not all?
More staggered. I don't like to do promotions all together because
Yep.
everybody's on a different journey. So it's kind of not fair to make someone else wait 6 months, you know, a year when they deserve it earlier. So I'm not big into huge promotion days. Maybe I might do one, but I don't. At my old gym, I never did it like that. I just did when the person's ready. I'll tell the parents, you know, if you want to come and watch. Other than that, I don't do like this big promotion thing because it doesn't make sense money-wise or anything.
So it's 8 to 10 per class potentially, and their promotion days are, you don't think very many per year?
No, I
Okay.
don't, yeah, like I said, I normally don't do those days at all because it's not worth it, you know.
Yeah, I think we're just trying to ask, is there gonna be one day like,
Yeah,
you know, where there's just a slew of people, but it doesn't sound
no,
like
if
there's.
there ever was something like that, I'd be respectful of the other businesses and do it on a Saturday, you know, when it's not busy, you know, or a Sunday, make it a special day, but yeah, I wouldn't do it on like a Monday at 2:30 where it's jammed, you know, like cram up the whole parking lot.
No questions. Thank you.
No questions.
I just have a question, getting back to the hours again, which is, I guess, where I was trying to lead before.
Yeah.
If you're starting between 5, maybe about 5 o'clock, would you say that many of the professional offices are leaving at that time and freeing up more of the parking space?
Yeah, I've never noticed a huge difference after 4. 2 to 4, it gets a little bit busy, but still there's tons of spots.
Yeah.
But by 5 and after, it's dead, you know.
You drove by there on the way here tonight, right?
Yeah, there was 10 cars.
Okay. And that's really all I had.
All right.
No questions. Thank you for the testimony.
No questions. Thank you for the testimony. Wish you luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did want to point out also that we got did get a memo from the traffic sergeant from the police department, Kurt Morris. And he also indicated that he's never seen any traffic issues in that, with the lot as far as parking. So, we have that from him as well. Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
Anybody from the public? Seeing none, are you done with your testimony then?
Done.
I am.
Is there someone who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to
I'll
approve.
second it.
A roll call, please.
Councilman Mark
What is
Scott.
the motion? Motion to,
To approve with the with the parking variance.
and how
Yeah,
many
to-
spots are we talking about? Is it the 44?
It was 144 where required, where 101 are existing and proposed. 43 deviation from the, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so who seconded?
I did.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes.
Robert Bleakley,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Ernie Ragstat,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Otto, yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. Congratulations, it was a long time coming.
Good
Thank
luck.
you so much. Thank you all so much.
Wait, reading of the resolution so that Mr. Kerner.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I know, and there's been a request for a 5-minute break in between while you're coming up and setting up. Okay, thank you.
You would come back to zoning department, submit your zoning application to us, and then I'll review it, sign it off for approval with the verbiage in the decision comments that the applicant waived the rights of the reading of the resolution. Then we'll pass it over to the building department. He could come to the office tomorrow if he would like. Okay?
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
No, I was reading over.
Where were we with this Pops Bagels application? They
Yeah, I
their
know.
engineer had provided I don't know.
Okay, next, we'd like to welcome PB number 24-723, Pops Bagels, YHK Realty. Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, board professionals. Rich Wenner, Lavery, Savaji, and Cohn, here again on behalf of the applicant, Pops Bagel. We were last here before the board on December 18th of 2024. Just for the board's recollection and perhaps refresher for new board members, if it looks like there might be some, or at least you're sitting in different places than you were last year. This is a proposal to convert a former service station on the property located at 4 Sparta Ave into a bagel shop, and a proposal of an addition of approximately 321 square foot addition. When we were last here, I'm going to sit if that's okay, because when we were last here, we had approximately 2+ hours of testimony from our architect as well as our engineer. And we had what I thought was a pretty good colloquy with the board and the board professionals. And as a result of that colloquy in December, what started off as an application needing several C variances for the signage resulted in an elimination of the sign variances that were initially proposed. We are left with pre-existing impervious coverage. It's a reduction of what's already there from approximately 96% to 91%. And there are some design waiver requirements, which we still need to discuss with the board and the board professionals relative to parking. We have more than enough parking space. However, the dimensions of the parking spaces is what we need waivers on. Before I get into the bringing our experts forward and on the testimony, one of the conversations that we had at the last meeting involved the freestanding sign. And there were some board members who stated what I took to be a strong preference that sign be eliminated. And we took that into consideration, and our proposal tonight for the board is to remove the freestanding sign and in its place install a more contemporary pedestal monument sign. So it would be a reduction in the height of the sign itself. It'd be ground mounted. And we can talk about that more to the board, but we wanted to start off tonight with letting the board know that we did hear its concerns on the aesthetics of what's currently there. We are trying to work with the board and present a project that's what you want to see. So thought I'd get that out of the way initially. So tonight we do have Bill Stimmel, who is our traffic engineer. He's also a professional engineer. We had conversations at the last meeting regarding the traffic circulation. The board may recall that, ultimately DOT is going to have the trump card to play as to ingress, egress out of the property. But I believe it was board member Dunbar, I think it was Ms. Dunbar, who had questions about circulation or you were environmental, ma'am? You had environmental questions?
I did.
Okay, so anyway, there were comments and questions about the traffic, so, Mr. Stimmel is here tonight to answer any questions that the board professionals may have on the traffic. And then Matt Flynn is our professional planner. He's with John McDonough and Associates. He's here to provide testimony in support of what now resulted in about two variances, a side yard, which are pre-existing, and then the impervious coverage, which is pre-existing, and he can also speak to the sign proposal as well. And not to take up too much more time of the board, but Ms. Dunbar did have a question last meeting in December about the environmental. We did submit to the board a report from the licensed site remediation professional, Applied Earth Solutions. That's a letter dated January 13th of this year, giving an update and a summary on the current state of the environmental remediation for the property. And just to cut to the chase, the entire site will be remediated in compliance by 25-26. So I hope that satisfies the board's legitimate concerns about the property, and we're trying to keep the board apprised of what's going on. So without further ado, we can jump right into the planning testimony if you'd like, and then if there's any questions on site plans that you still might have, we can have Mr. Stimmel speak to that. But Matt, do you want to come forward?
Matt, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name for the record, please?
Matthew Flynn, Flynn.
Thank you.
And Matt, if you would you just provide to the board your credentials, your educational background, how long you've been practicing, and advise whether your licenses are current and in good standing in the state of New Jersey?
Sure. My education comes from Rutgers. I have my master's degree in planning and public policy. I have my professional planner's license in the state of New Jersey, as well as the national licensure, which is the AICP license for planners. It's my first time to have the pleasure to be before this board. However, I have been before over 100 other boards across the state.
And Matt, your license is current with the state?
Yes.
Thank you. Any comments for the board? We accept his qualifications.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Matt, can you just explain to the board the justification for the variances that we are still seeking on this application?
Yeah, so by way of background, I think this is a pretty exciting application. We are in the town center area, which I'm sure the board is familiar with. It's a historically significant area, so there is some significance there in terms of restoring older buildings. I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a historic landmark, but we are preserving the existing building, and we do feel the result is going to be a nice touch to the streetscape, and really, I think, meet the intent of the zoning to sort of bring these older buildings back to life and tell a nice story of going from old to new. Here, the nice thing is we are actually replacing a non-permitted use with a permitted use. So again, this is a sensitive area, this town center area. There are some specific guidelines in zoning specific to this area. And so by replacing a non-permitted use with a permitted use, we think this is a beneficial application. Not only that, but we are respecting the vast majority of the bulk requirements. Again, keeping the existing building, so the only two variances we're seeking are setbacks, which are existing conditions by virtue of keeping that building exactly where it is. And then the only technically new variance is lot coverage, which is actually an improvement over the existing condition. So we are adding some green to the property. So with that, those are the variances that we're seeking. And just to go through the statutory criteria, I think we can look to the C2 balancing test. The benefits of the application as a whole substantially outweigh any detriments. The positives come from the municipal land use law, the purposes of zoning. I think we can look to purpose A, promotion of the general welfare. Again, replacing a non-permitted use with a permitted use, again, in keeping with the intent of the zoning. Purpose G, variety of uses in appropriate locations. I'll quote the zoning ordinance here in terms of the purpose of this TCC town center zone. Quote, this zone provides for community commercial uses to complement and enhance the existing retail and service use and historic character in the town center area, end quote. So I think really clearly this is a community commercial use. I think the name implies it's a mom and pop shop. Actually, it's a child pop shop. The name of the place is Pops. This is going to be a community commercial establishment that's really going to serve the local community. Purpose I, desirable visual environment. This is a visually prominent corner property. This is going to be an upgrade to a long-standing building. Again, an existing auto service building, and we're going to revitalize that with something that the zone specifically anticipates, which is a restaurant use. Not only that, in terms of building upgrades, but also in terms of the parking. As the board knows, this is, like I said, an existing auto service use. So by virtue of that, you do get that sort of free-for-all parking arrangement. There's no striping on the property. It's your typical auto service type circulation and parking arrangement. One of the benefits of this application is that this is going to look cleaner, more organized with dedicated striping, dedicated parking spaces, compliant in terms of number of parking spaces. And finally, purpose M of the municipal land use law is efficient use of land in terms of efficiency. It doesn't really get any better than adaptive reuse of existing buildings. Again, it's not a complete demolition of what's out there today. It's really working with the site. And so with that, I do want to. I think, Rich, was this? did we show
Yeah, that
this
was
last time?
previously marked. That was, yes.
Was that previously marked?
Yes, that was marked as A1 architectural rendering in 3D color. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just going to show the board just as a refresher here. Exhibit A1 is, like council mentioned, the architectural rendering. These proposed windows are actually where the existing garage bays are on the building. So like I said, it's sort of a nice thing that respects the old and, of course, brings in the new. It does retain that appearance of, you can look at it and sort of get the sense that this was an auto service establishment at some point. And again, respecting that and really upgrading it. And I think that sort of meets the intent of the zoning there with a nice new building that upgrades a non-permitted use. So all of that goes towards the positive criteria, what makes this a beneficial project. The flip side to that is the negative criteria, no substantial detriment to the public or to the zone. Like I mentioned, in terms of bulk variances, we're not worsening any of the bulk conditions. Lot coverage is improving, which of course is a benefit there in terms of aesthetics, in terms of functionality, and zone compliance. And of course, setbacks are existing conditions. So really respecting what's out there today, working with what's out there today, not proposing something that's going to stand out as brand new from a massing standpoint, or introduce something that's not already out there, really upgrading what's out there today. So all said, I think this really does represent a really great and fun opportunity to revitalize this property with some very attractive architecture. Again, in keeping with the intent to respect the old and, of course, bring in the new, replacing a non-permitted use with a permitted use, improving impervious coverage. With all that said, I think this is a very appropriate project and approval is warranted. So if there's any questions, I know I was brief, so I'm happy to answer anything.
Jeanette Brownfields.
Well, thank you very much for your commitment to remediating the property. I think that's wonderful. And the fact that we're going to hopefully have a bagel place right in the town center, I think that'd be great. I don't have any other questions. I mean, I'm very satisfied with what you guys have come up with.
Thank you.
No questions.
I have no questions.
Ron?
Yeah, so if I can, just going back to the testimony of last time, just make sure I remember. So I think for the signs, the agreement was that all the signs were going to be brought into conformance.
Yes.
In the spaces, you're looking for a variance there, the parking lot size?
Design waivers.
Design
Yeah,
waivers,
yeah,
yes, thank you.
Design waivers on the parking, on the
And then
dimensions.
also a design waiver for the,
I can go through
Loaded.
them. I neglected to go through the design waivers, so
Okay.
I'd be happy to just list those out for you.
awesome.
Bear with me. Okay, so we are requesting 5 design waivers, all related to the parking arrangement. Number 1, a 24-foot wide drive aisle is required behind 90-degree parking spaces. We're proposing 20 feet instead of the 24 feet. Number 2 here, minimum parking space size. We're proposing 9 by 18, whereas 9 by 20 is what's required. 9 by 18 is really typical, especially on a smaller development such as this one. Number 3, 1 loading space is required, whereas no loading space is proposed. If the board will recall, our engineer actually testified to that at the last hearing when loading and unloading will occur off-peak hours where it won't interact or jeopardize the circulation on the property. Number 4 requires that sidewalks are to be separated from parking areas by 4 feet, whereas the proposed sidewalks are adjacent to the parking area. I think, again, we can look to the small-scale nature of the site. We're not looking at a sea of asphalt where someone might have to meander through that. This is really going to be a quick and easy in and out of the building. And finally, number 5, curbing is required around all parking areas, whereas we're not proposing Curbing is required all around all parking areas, whereas we're not proposing curbing along the Sparta Avenue and Woodport Road sides of the parking lot. Again, all of this was testified by the engineer at the last meeting, and really, again, I think we can look to the small-scale nature of the property. It's not going to stand out as being something that is this vast situation that flies in the face of the zoning. So really, this is all going to function safely and efficiently. And the planning rationale, we can look to the municipal land use law, section 51, whether the relief is warranted by being reasonable or appropriate. And I think by virtue of the fact that this is going to function safely, efficiently, meets that standard.
The new freestanding sign, the pedestal mounted one, is there a design, a drawing or something, or anything we can look at there, or is it something that would come before the
I don't believe so.
minor site plan subcommittee?
Right, we would bring for the minor site plan, and it's just, yeah, so, it's not gonna, I wanna make sure our nomenclature is correct, so we're talking not, so when we talk about freestanding, it's what's currently there, we're talking about a ground mounted.
Yes.
Use the word pedestal, it's, wah-wah, kind of, the traditional, what is now traditional, kind of, ground mounted sign.
I can show that.
Yep.
That's something across the street.
That's similar across the
You want me
street,
to pass it around?
or you can just reference it.
Okay. Yeah, so if we look at, this is actually a similar sign style that we see along Sparta Avenue here. Specifically, I noted one at 19 Sparta Avenue, which is Cafe, I'm going to mispronounce it, Perot, maybe. A very similar sign if the board might be familiar with something like that.
And with appropriate landscaping and.
And also, if I remember from the last testimony, I think Mr. Simmons had brought up the lighting design, that you were going to look into replacing the current parking lighting with something more suitable to the streetscape?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and board members, Madam Chairman and board members. What I recall was we suggested to your engineer that the fixtures that were going to be used stay in line with the streetscape that's out there along Sparta Avenue, and we can provide them with details of those fixtures.
Yes.
And also, we can verify the foot candles on the site to make sure it's adequately lit.
That's correct, and we had no objection to that.
Okay. So I guess the last question I have then is, and it sounds like you may have answered already, so the new freestanding sign or the pedestal mounted sign will not be, there's no internal lighting, internally illuminated signs, right? These will all be indirect lighting?
Right, we're gonna do indirect lighting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And they'll be,
Thanks.
I'm sorry, and they'll be within the 12 square foot requirement?
Correct, right,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. There was some conversation about the parking spaces where you were requesting 16, but only 13 were required, and there was going to be some consideration to looking into that, maybe having some, going back to 13 and having some other green space in there. Was that considered?
Yeah, I don't want to, yes, we did have a conversation about that internally, and the preference is to keep it at the proposed 16. If the board will recall, some of those spaces are going to be devoted to employee parking.
Those would be the first 3 as you're coming in.
Right, so, and I can have either Hatham or you guys come up and speak about, again, the operations, but there's a quick in and out, generally at the store, and they believe that operationally it makes sense to have the 16 with 3 devoted to employee parking, leaving 3 for customers. But you are discussing, or you will do appropriate landscaping and, as to the extent possible, beautify the area, which is currently mostly a parking lot now, as you know.
Joan, can I correct you real quick? You'd said 12 square feet on the signs. It's actually 24 square feet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Whatever,
I saw that.
it's going to be conforming, whatever
Yes,
the
yes.
code calls for, we are
Yeah.
going to be in conformance with
I
it.
don't know why I wrote that down last time, that somebody said it. The other thing, and I don't know if this is for you, but we had talked about making it one way. and I know the DOT is going to be looking at that as well, but I was thinking about it as people are backing out. And if you have one backing out in this direction because they want to go out Sparta Avenue, and somebody backing out in that direction because they want to go out the other street, that it might be an issue. So it's just, if you.
Absolutely, yes.
had
So Mr.
considered-
Stimmel is here, who prepared the traffic report that was
That'll be
submitted to
that.
the board, and he can certainly testify.
All right, I'll wait for that. Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Question, why are you going to eliminate the curbing? Are we talking about the curbing that's going to be on the rounded corner?
I think I'll
Yeah.
defer that also to the engineer, just, if we
Okay.
can wait for
Yeah.
him to just.
Mr. Stimmel can address that.
Okay. Who would address the size of the parking spots?
He could address that as well, but just to add to my testimony regarding the size, like I said, 9 by 18 is something that we see fairly commonly in developments like these. And also, we do have constraints, both in terms of the width of the aisles as well as the parking spaces, given the constraints of the site itself. We have an existing building that we're working with, so that only leaves the space that it leaves for circulation and parking. And so we feel that this is really the only option. But again, I'll defer to the engineer.
Okay. And I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I'll just speak for myself. And I want to tell you that we're not necessarily attracted or glued to the gas station look, okay? I mean, if it had a Tudor style look or something similar to what Lake Mohawk and also the other, and the other buildings that are on the corner there, look, that would certainly be acceptable and attractive to us, or to me. And that's it. I'll reserve my other questions for the traffic engineer. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm good for now, but thank you.
While I'd echo the comments on the aesthetics, I also understand the applicant has spent money to work up a design, and so I'm going to appreciate that and thank them for fitting a tricky site plan into that space.
Just one quick question. Is there a reduction in the impervious coverage overall?
There is.
Can you just reiterate what that is?
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, that is currently 98.4%, going down to 91.7%.
I'm sorry, that was to 91.
0.73.
Thank you.
The last time that you were here, we talked a little bit about plantings, that you try to work in some hopefully native plantings. Are we going to hear about that?
I wasn't intending to bring more testimony. My recollection was the last board hearing, we agreed to work with the township engineer on the site plan and on the plantings. We saw and heard the concerns regarding native plantings, and there's no objection from us at all in working with the township to make sure that what is planted is what you want to see planted. We don't have a problem with that.
Where were those plantings going to be again?
Well, if you wouldn't mind, I can have Bill, our engineer, when he comes up and talk about the site plan, and it'll show that on there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was a letter from the Environmental Commission talking about that,
Yep.
the native plantings, yes. Okay.
And when you were talking about the new sign, I think I heard you mention plantings as appropriate, presumably at the base or around that sign, so, okay.
Any other questions? From the public?
Jenny?
Jenny from the public. Okay, hearing none, I thank you, and we'll move on to your next witness.
Thank you.
I mean, are there any questions from the board professionals of Mr. Flynn?
The only question I had with, and I know you don't have the plan for it tonight, but on what I'm calling the monument sign, I just want to make sure it's in the record that that does not, I don't know where it is on the plan yet, but to make sure it's not in any site triangle easement.
Right, it won't be, and Mr. Stimmel can certify that as well when he gives his testimony.
Okay.
And that's not part of this application now, right? You're just going to come back on a minor site plan for that monument sign.
Yes,
Right.
before the subcommittee.
That would be for all of the signs.
Well,
Because what you proposed, you said you were going to reduce to come into conformance. So we'd like to see them, and you did say you would come back with some kind of renderings.
as part of our final plan submissions on approval, if we got approval. So we would submit revised drawings per the comments and conditions agreed to at the December 18th hearing.
But we'd like to see them all at the minor site plan subcommittee and look at it as a whole, not piecemeal.
Okay, whatever you want.
I also had a question with respect to the employee parking. Is it designated
Yes,
by signage?
yes,
That's shown on your plan?
it will be.
Okay.
Catherine? didn't
I
mean
had
to
no
skip
comments
over
for this witness. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, I will call Bill Stimmel, a traffic engineer. He's also a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey who can speak to the site plan as well. Bill, would you please raise your right hand?
Yes, raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name, please?
William Stimmel, Stimmel.
Bill, would you mind giving the board your credentials, your educational background, and confirming that your license is in good standing in the state of New Jersey, please?
Sure. I'm a graduate of NJIT with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. I've been working for the past 25 years in the state of New Jersey as an engineer with a particular focus in traffic engineering. I've been a licensed engineer since 2004. My license is current. I'm also a certified professional traffic operations engineer, and I've taught as an adjunct at the civil engineering department at NJIT in a senior level transportation design class. And I've been accepted as an expert witness in front of or on behalf of boards in many, many municipalities in New Jersey, but not here in Sparta.
And your license is current and in good standing in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, yes it is.
Any questions for the board? No, he's accepted then as an engineer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, you can stand or have a seat, whatever you like. There were a few questions that were asked by the board members. One was regarding the circulation on the property. Could you address that, please?
Yes, I'm going to refer to the plans that were submitted at the last round of hearings. These are the drawings prepared by Mr. Adnan Khan, AWZ Engineering. Flipping to sheet C03. Sorry, Adnan. So as the board had noted, there is the 24-foot wide aisle to the east of the building and the 20-foot wide aisle, to the north of the building on Sparta Avenue. The proposed parking dimensions are typically 9 by 18, aside from the handicap parking, of course. 9 by 18 is a fairly widely accepted standard in the engineering world. You do sometimes see ordinances that require 9 by 19, 9 by 20, 10 by 20, and various other dimensions. And generally speaking, that additional length and width is not necessary unless you're talking about an environment where you have a lot of shopping carts, strollers, something like that, for additional maneuvering space between or behind the vehicles. So in this context, the 9 by 18 is more than adequate based on accepted engineering standards. As far as the aisle width goes, we have no issue with the aisle width on the east side of the building. That 24 feet meets the municipal standard. We are requesting a design waiver for the aisle width on the north side of the building towards Sparta Avenue, where it's 20 feet. The intention is that the majority of vehicles aren't the size of the full design vehicle, which is a large pickup or a large van, something of that nature, and can safely maneuver in and out of the parking spaces with that 20-foot aisle. The larger vehicles would need to encroach somewhat into the public right-of-way, and when I say public right-of-way, I don't mean the street. I mean that they would overhang a little bit into that sidewalk area. This is essentially what would have been an existing condition when the gas pumps were located in front of the building between the building facade and Sparta Avenue, the vehicles on the outside or the north side of the pumps would already be parked within that public right-of-way. So it's essentially an existing condition. We did anticipate the possibility that the board would have concerns about pedestrian safety at that location, and when we went out and counted cars at the intersection, pedestrians were counted as well, and there were minimal volumes of pedestrian traffic at that location, so we don't anticipate a conflict there. In terms of vehicles backing out of spaces intending to go opposite directions within the internal drive aisles, the site does have a fair amount of turnover. Bagel shop, coffee shop like this, typically people come in and out within a short period of time. You get what you're there for and you leave and you're off to work or wherever you're going. So it does have a fair amount of turnover, but it's not any different than if you were at another shopping center, if you were at the supermarket. You've got cars pulling out all the time. You have to look out for the people in the space next to you and yield. The aisles are certainly wide enough to accommodate traffic traveling in opposite directions, and by allowing cars to travel both ways through the site, you allow people to make lefts and rights out onto Sparta Avenue or Mohawk Avenue and get traffic going to its ultimate destination with the minimum of additional maneuvering. If you make it one-way driveways, you essentially force more turning movements at the adjoining intersection or on the surrounding roadway network. So don't anticipate a safety issue with it necessarily, and feel that it provides the best opportunity for the drivers to get to their ultimate destination. As the board attorney and the board, or as the applicant's attorney and the applicant's planner had both noted, ultimately the distribution of traffic at the site driveways, the movements that are permitted, the flow within the property is going to come down to the review and approval of DOT, as the roadway is under state jurisdiction at that location. So we would certainly abide by whatever the DOT says. Yeah, the curbing, there's no intention to remove the curbing along the street frontages. There's going to be a section of curb where full-height curb is constructed, where the existing driveway on Sparta Avenue closest to the intersection is closed. So we're going to have new full-height curb at that location. We are going to replace the curbing if and where directed by, I would imagine, the municipal engineer, but whoever the appropriate entity is in Sparta. The curbing is not going to be provided between the site parking lot and the public right-of-way along both frontages. There are wheel stops proposed where the spaces abut the right-of-way along Mohawk Avenue, and the curb is going to be flush with the sidewalk along Sparta Avenue. And again, that's an existing condition, so that's where the waiver comes in for not providing the curbing. Someone had asked about landscaping.
Yes, thank you.
No specific plantings have been selected at this point. I think the most obvious location for landscaping would be along the western property line, which, where the site abuts the liquor store, and the southern property line adjacent to the Mohawk Avenue driveway. We could propose some low plantings in the landscape area adjacent to the intersection, particularly around the base of the sign, just to give it a little more aesthetic appeal, and would certainly be willing to work with the board or their professionals to select the plantings.
Okay, we'll start with Mark.
Hi. I spent a lot of time with this drawing and standing on the site, trying to figure out how, just knowing that intersection, knowing the way the lights are timed and the way traffic accelerates, in particular going west on Sparta Avenue. How could this, can you tell me how either of these entrances could have anything other than right turns allowed here?
Yeah, I would imagine the concern is related to queuing at the traffic light.
Certainly, yes, sir.
If you try to pull out of the site and you want to make a left turn onto Sparta Avenue and the queue is extended across the site frontage, you have to wait for the queue to clear.
Correct.
You can make a right. It's the same situation on Mohawk Avenue. What we find with these sites is that the people that are there off-peak hours, there's not as much traffic on the roadway, the queues aren't extensive, will make the left turns out when they can. If you're in a hurry to get to work and you stop here for coffee and you can't get out of the site, let's say making that left onto Sparta Avenue, there's plenty of other places to get coffee. You're not going to come to this location, or you're not going to come to this location at 8 o'clock in the morning on your way to work. Maybe on Saturday morning, it's a different story. So there's a bit of self-regulating with it. There's the convenience-based nature of the trips associated with this application. You know, bagel shops, coffee shops, donut shops. There are other opportunities to get your coffee. If you're in the car for half an hour, you're probably going to pass 10 different places you can get coffee. And if it's not convenient for you to get in and out of this site, and it's a convenience-based trip, you're just not going to go here. You're going to go somewhere else. So we anticipate that a large volume of traffic going to the property is going to be right in, right out. Certainly not all of it. And the people that are making lefts are going to wait for the queues to clear. They're going to wait for a gap in the traffic. And the report showed, based on the counts we provided at the site, that traffic could get in and out of the site efficiently, even during the morning peak hour.
Okay, because it says in your report that you're anticipating approximately 90 to 98 cars per hour.
Correct.
Yeah, right. And you've got, is it 16 non-employee spaces?
There's 16 parking spaces.
13.
You said non-employee space?
Okay. Well, without the employee spaces, 13. Okay. So that means that you're okay. You're anticipating turnover of 7 times an hour per each spot,
Correct.
right? Okay. So you're gonna have a lot of action here with 13 cars. And I'm just wondering, you said that there was no curbing on the Sparta Avenue side? Are cars just gonna be able to come in? Okay, I understand that.
Yeah, to clarify, there's no curbing in the interior of the property between the parking area and the sidewalk.
Right.
That's the existing condition if you
Okay.
went out there tonight. The curbing that's there on Sparta Avenue between the street and the sidewalk is going to remain.
So, okay. So I'm coming out, first of all, I park in the spot that's directly to the left of the handicap spot. Okay? And I back up
Correct.
and I want to go west on Sparta Avenue. How do I do that? I have to do a complete 180-degree turn coming in that tight parking lot. Yes, sir. I'm parked head in. I'm going west on Sparta Avenue. I'm going towards the intersection.
Okay.
And I pull into the spot directly to the left of the handicap spot, right there, correct?
Correct.
I get my coffee, I get my bagel, I'm very happy, and I want to go west again on Sparta Avenue.
Back the way you came.
Right, what do I do?
You back out of the parking space with the rear of the car going toward the intersection. You pull forward to the driveway, make the left turn out onto Sparta Avenue.
Okay, but I'm looking right, and I've got cars that are coming around the jug handle and coming up the hill, right? Are they going to see me? If there's a car turning to the right, if I decide that I'm going to just dodge out as soon as a car that comes past me from left to right and is making a turn onto Woodport Road, is that car that's coming through the jug handle going to see me?
You're not talking about on the site now, you're talking about pulling out
No,
onto
yeah,
Sparta
right.
Avenue.
So I've got my bagel and my coffee. I'm really happy, and I want to go left, okay? And there's a car at the intersection. There's a car that's just gone past me from left to right, and now it's going to make a right on what we call Woodport Road or 181, and another car or multiple cars is coming through the jug handle and whisking through the jug handle, and they don't see me, I don't see them,
From
because
Spring
there's a
Street.
car between us, right? And now I'm making a left-hand turn.
It's like any other left-hand turn. You're gonna have to wait until traffic is clear.
I think it's just the self-regulating, right? So you're just gonna go out the other way then, right?
Well, I'm just saying, I can't imagine how you make a left-hand turn out of there. And,
Yeah, you would go out the other exit and come around the jug handle.
but you could do that, right?
I'd make a right and go around the jug handle.
You could do that, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct, Celeste. But so we do, that has to become a learned experience, right? You have to learn through, in other words, there's no, what we're saying is that we're going to allow people to go left or right. And then they're just going to have to figure it out after a few times here that they're going to go right, that they can only go right because that's really the only way you can get out. Or, I mean, what if they want to go out onto Woodport Road and make a left? Traffic is typically backed up there, right? Traffic is always backed up there, coming from Woodport Road up the slope, past what used to be the pizza store, and now it's a empty the screen store, right? Okay, you're coming up, and you've got cars that are backed up there. How am I going to possibly make a left-hand turn when I've got cars coming south on, right? I'm sorry, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying, I'm just concerned that a left-hand turn is just, in either of these, is a challenge. You're the professional, though, so that's.
Just to back you up, just to back him up, I have in my notes here from last time that it was going to be a right turn only, no left turns on both exits. And I wrote that down, I starred it, and that was going to be one of the conditions. So I was surprised to hear something different this time.
I don't have, that was discussed, I don't have that as.
I just re-listened to the whole YouTube today before coming in.
And that's what, we agreed to that as a condition?
The other, I wasn't at the last hearing. The other thing I would say is that the site is not an existing gas station, but it had been a gas station.
Sure.
It's a significant generator of traffic. You had a driveway roughly at the location of the driveway that's to remain on Sparta Avenue. You had another driveway which was right on the intersection, and you have a driveway on Mohawk Avenue. And as far as I could tell, the lot's been repaved, but there were no prohibitions on turning movement with that.
We didn't have the traffic.
Yeah, I would,
A population difference of maybe 50%.
I would just add that I don't see it as the problem that I think it's being demonstrated because you said it's going to self-regulate. I agree it's going to self-regulate. And just trying to let you guys know that I don't think it's going to allow for turning left out of there. I agree. But just trying to let you guys know local knowledge is
And the DOT
kind of like, no way.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah.
The DOT is also going to weigh in on this, and I can't imagine that they're going to allow a traffic travesty.
Right.
So I think, yeah. I
If they
think
come up and visit us, maybe if they actually come and see the site. I mean, the DEP has approved sites here in town and never came up.
Kurt actually said, Kurt's report said that he had no issue.
If you,
Well, I understand that.
if you look at Catherine's report on page 2, it's actually a picture of the site in color. And it doesn't say what time it was or anything like that, but clearly the traffic on Woodport Road at that light would prohibit anyone from making a left-hand turn at that time. This is just a snapshot. I mean, it could have been highest time. I just find it funny that it's the only snapshot that it has.
Yeah, you would have a difficult time making a left onto Woodport Road with the queue there, but you could also just make the right out of the other driveway and turn left at the light.
Correct. That's why we're saying that.
Being at the
Why?
light
Make you
helps
guys
too.
Right.
aware.
Yeah.
It's going to self-regulate. I agree.
Why is there an
Nothing
objection now
self-regulates
to
like
not doing the left-hand turn sign?
Nothing is foolproof, it's fools are inventive.
there was an understanding of the board that we did, then I apologize, but we had, and that's why we have Mr. Stoney here today, because we understood there was concerns about the circulation of the property. That's why we brought them here. My recollection from the 18th of December meeting was that we obviously heard these concerns regarding left and right exiting out of the parking lot. We acknowledged that DOT had ultimate approval because it was under DOT jurisdiction, and at that time, we were not willing to commit to limiting the left turn or right turn out of the property. So it's not a new objection. It was an objection that we had prior. And if I can just, if I may, just anecdotally, my office is on 517 in Hackettstown. It is an incredibly busy road. I have to make a left. I have to cross over 2 lanes. Sometimes I'm sitting there for 5 minutes, waiting for a break in traffic to make that left-hand turn. So I only have one exit out of my office. I have no choice. I can't do it another way around. But you also will recall the testimony from the applicant regarding the operational hours of this site. It's 4 o'clock in the morning is when they open. They shut down 2:30, maybe 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So there are going to be times during the day when the business is open when you're not going to have the volume concerns that, you want to talk to that?
I have one thing I'd like to add to the point our attorney was just bringing up, is that the projections of site-generated traffic in the report are based on data published by the ITE. There's no specific corollary to bagel shop. So I use the coffee donut shop without drive-through, which represents, and I'm not going to name any names, but think of your typical large-scale coffee and donut chain and the volume of traffic that they generate. Our client almost jumped through the phone at me and said, we're not going to have that volume of traffic. We're going to have roughly half of what the big chains do. And that's still a pretty successful business, I would think. So the numbers were projected in the report based on the best available data. We analyzed the intersection, we analyzed the driveways, and found that everything operated successfully, so there was no need to adjust those numbers. I think if you called the client up here, he's not expecting to have 90 cars in and out of there every morning. So I think, if that's part of the concern, we should also bring that to light.
Don't get me wrong. I am extremely overjoyed that you are going to do what you're going to do here, that you're going to make this eyesore into a beautiful store, a useful store, hopefully a very popular store. I'm just concerned that if this planning board allows you to make a left-hand turn out of either of those intersections, how do we roll back the clock once we've had 10, 20, 30, 40 accidents?
Well, no, one of the board members, but Bill just asked me if I had the letter from the township's traffic consultant, who was a police officer.
Right.
And you do have it in your back, and he had no concerns with. No problem.
Yeah, I have it here. I mean, Kurt reviewed the traffic impact analysis that was provided and agrees with the conclusion that there would be little to no impact on traffic operations. So, again, I think we're all happy to see the site being developed. And I mean, for me personally, I want the business to be successful. So I'm happy to hear that they weren't expecting 90, like that wasn't, their success wasn't tied to that number, because I don't see it happening. But I'm similarly concerned, but if it's going to self-regulate, whatever, then fine.
What about for someone that arrives here for the first time? They haven't learned the self-regulation that you're speaking of.
Yeah.
I don't mean this in a flippant manner at all, but I'm hopeful that a person who's behind the wheel of an automobile about to pull out into traffic will stop and recognize that I can't pull out yet because there's a volume of traffic coming, and they'll have the common sense to wait until there is a break in traffic. And I mean that sincerely. The report that Bill prepared doesn't identify a safety issue with the proposed ingress and egress out of the property. The township's, I'll call him this expert or consultant, does not identify an issue. And ultimately, again, it's a DOT jurisdiction. So we're gonna have, if DOT comes back and says, hey, no way, no, it's right turn only, you're not doing left turn, even if the board says, hey, left turn is great, doesn't matter, because we gotta go through DOT. But what we don't wanna do at this point is unnecessarily, and I don't wanna say arbitrarily, because your points are valid and your concerns are valid, but unnecessarily hamstring the applicant in what is hopefully going to be a new business that opens up within the township. And if it passes any prediction of future success, a successful business by limiting the ingress and egress out of the property for its customers. And that's where we're coming at. We are, and I think the board can appreciate and recognize how much we have heard your concerns and how much we have willingly, not even grudgingly, like willingly, because we want to be good neighbors, work with the board on the signage issues, on all aspects, honestly, of this application to bring the board and the township a project and a product that it wants to see it. It's downtown. We hear you, and that's what we're trying to do. But this really is I don't want to say it's not a concern, because again, your points are valid and your concerns are valid. But we think we presented proofs in support of our proposal, and we would just respectfully request that the board, give us this one.
So if I could, similar to Ms. Furman, my notes, after listening to the tape, went back and listened to it, had an agreement that there would be no left turns out of either exit. I think there was still conversation going on about being a left turn into the parking lot and who controlled that. But to me, my notes, I'm gonna have to go back and look at the tape.
I will as well.
And what I like to do is, I think you're hearing a pretty loud concern here. I'd like you to reconsider that. I understand your position tonight. I think it's inconsistent with what your position at the last meeting, and like you to rethink having no left turns, going out of the parking lot.
So, Madam, may I have?
Of course.
Just a comment, Mr. Stimmel. What if during the peak times, let's say 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., there was a no left turn out only for those times, right? Where it would be maybe more appropriate because of the rush hour. Would the applicant be willing to do that? And I recognize the jurisdiction is going to go to DOT, but the board could impose a condition asking the applicant, when you submit to DOT, to specifically tell the DOT that this board requested a no left turn between certain hours.
Have to take that up with the
Right.
applicant. I can't identify a specific safety.
I don't know if you can
concern,
do
so
it
I
today,
wouldn't
or you're
recommend it,
planning
but-
on coming back, or are we?
Actually,
trying-
very
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, well, that's,
We love being here.
you want to take a
but-
couple minutes? Yeah.
That's actually a very good
Right.
point, because right on that street, there is a timed
Yes.
right turn.
During certain
Yep.
hours, why not just have
During
it?
certain hours,
That's to
just keep
provide
it to that
gaps for
same.
the
Yeah,
streets up above.
yep, and
There's
I
only
think
certain
that's
times
a
I'm
great
okay with.
recommendation.
Listen, I'm just,
Yeah.
hey, I'm just gonna add that I've come out of the liquor store adjacent, and I have gotten out on a left, but very infrequently. So more often than not, I go right. I'm just trying to let you guys know to set your expectations, no matter what is decided, that, that's just local.
Just so, are we discussing a restricted no left turn
Yes.
signage 7 to 9, something like that? That's
Or
Right, just have it
similar to
correlate
what's
what
there
the
now.
signs are.
That would also,
There's-
right, that would also require additional signage, right?
Sure, at the
Yeah,
exits, right.
so we have to
Right.
take that
Right,
into consideration
exactly.
also.
Right.
All those are
But
regulatory
also,
signs.
it's
They don't apply
also
to
the
side
school
roads.
hours.
Right.
Kids are getting out of school, every parent is driving, picking up their kids, so that 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, that's very busy as well.
Well, I think it's,
so my
4 to
concern-
6 and,
They're closed at
yeah,
2:30.
they're-
They're closed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
it's
that
only the morning.
time right before closing.
So my concern's a little different is, again, weekends, where there is no school, and there's gonna be a lot of traffic at that intersection. And if we're gonna talk hours, what are the hours? I go back to, I wanna go back and listen to the tape, because I was pretty clear the agreement was no left turns.
Just gonna have a
Yeah, I
very
mean, I'm not
little
arguing,
jug
that's
handle,
not
that's
at all
all.
my recollection, and if we did agree to that, I'm not here knowingly, changing what we
Yeah,
what we
understand.
agreed to.
I totally understand. I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
No, I appreciate that. Can we have 3 minutes?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Yes,
Traffic's
5-minute
later.
break, please.
Now, it wasn't 70s.
Madam Chair, we had an opportunity to discuss and formally the board's request, and what we are proposing is to eliminate left-hand turns out onto the Woodmont 181. And but maintain left-hand turns out of the exit. And Bill can go over that
Yeah.
as well as the reasons.
Just referring to the site plan, again, what we'd be proposing is to give up left turns out onto Mohawk Avenue, because that left turn movement can be replicated by going out the site driveway onto Sparta Avenue, making a right-hand turn and going through the traffic signal. Also, that driveway is significantly closer to the intersection than the driveway on Sparta Avenue. We'd be proposing to maintain the lefts out onto Sparta Avenue because of the greater separation and the fact that if you take that movement away, then it either forces people to abandon the trip or recirculate through the area to the south to get to where they're going.
When does the DOT rule or do do they do it after our approval or prior to our approval? I mean, how does this all work?
Mr. O'Hare, speak to that, but any condition of this board's approval will be dependent upon obtaining outside agency approval. So we would get this, hopefully, this board's approval first, and then we would submit an application to the DOT.
What's wrong with going out, making a right onto 181 Woodport Road and then going around the jug handle for your left? That was the whole reason the jug handle was put in.
That's what
Joe,
they're
that's what they're
proposing.
proposing. Only right hand out onto
Onto 181.
181.
Woodport Road.
The
Oh,
one next
and
to
then
Burke's,
Yeah.
you
I
can
had it
make a left.
backwards.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
If you can.
Correct.
If you can.
Yeah.
So most people, if there's a queue and it's busy, they're gonna go, I'm not waiting here, and they're gonna make
Right,
a
and they
right.
gotta go around the
And
other,
then they
the
can
other
go
way.
around
It's
the jug handle
self-regulating
there
at
too.
that
Correct.
But what are they gonna do? Here they are. They say, oh, wow, there is a queue there, and they've got their car pointed out of that intersection.
I think we should bring this to a
What
motion.
are they gonna do? Back up now and then go out the other side? That's what I'm concerned about. I mean, just unnecessary.
Sorry.
Because if you made it, maybe I'm overthinking it, but, and I'm not a professional here, but I just know that I just
If you're
concerned about this.
if you're trying to pull out onto Sparta Avenue and make the left turn, and you say, there's a queue, there's traffic, I can't get out, I can't get out, I can't get out, you just wait for the queue and make the right turn and go to the traffic light and then recirculate through the neighborhood or go to the jug handle and come back. If the opportunity is there, if it's off-peak hours and somebody comes out of that driveway at 10:45 in the morning, well after the morning peak, well before the lunch peak, there's lower volumes of traffic, then they can just make the left turn and get to where they're going. Other times of day, if there's a lot of traffic, if there's queuing, if there's too much flow going across the site in the other direction, can't make the left out, I have to get out of here a different way. So that's what we're proposing. That's why we want to keep that left.
So maybe
good-
we
it's a
can
good argument.
finalize and move on a little bit then. So no left turn onto Woodport Road.
Correct.
And then maybe Mr. Aller's suggestion for the other road would be no left turn during certain hours, like the rush hour.
Or when you can.
Who's gonna enforce it?
Yeah.
We just,
Yeah,
we
that-
just-
I mean,
It's
we're,
not
we're,
gonna be in-
well, you
They
know,
could enforce
but they're
it.
not.
I mean, it's,
well, that same intersection
But it will still, it will stop people. It will stop people.
So our preference is not to have a time restriction or a durational restriction on left-hand turns off the Sparta Ave.
But would you accept it as a condition of approval?
Well, we'd ask them,
Ernie, that intersection has a no right on red,
yes.
right?
It's,
Between
that's,
7 and
that,
9.
that reason for that no right on red is to provide gaps in traffic for traffic flowing south.
Okay.
So that people can get out of Mohawk Ave and, the businesses up in that area. That's the whole reason for that no right on red. The other thing, the the other thing I did want to bring up is, remember, we were talking about traffic volumes. Traffic volume on Route 181 in the 70s was probably twice what it is right now, before Route 15 was built, because it was Route 15. I got old pictures from the police department of traffic backed up past the bowling alley, waiting to make a left-hand turn at that intersection before the jug handle was built. The jug handle was built to alleviate the problems in that intersection there. So, again, traffic was, I know it's heavier now than it was 20 years ago, but 50 years ago, it was a lot worse. So understand that, a lot of what we have there, that no right-hand turn on red, the jug handle that was put in, all that was designed to make traffic better in that area. And I know sometimes, I have trouble sometimes getting out of Mohawk Avenue. I live in the lake. There's times when you say, you know what, I'm not gonna go to Mohawk. I'm gonna go up Winona Parkway and use the traffic light, because I know I can make a left at peak hours. And I think we're talking about the same thing here. And from my background, I completely agree with exactly what the engineer is saying. That one driveway is too close to the intersection and should have a left-hand turn prohibition, because you're only talking about two cars queued and they can't turn, so, but the other one, I think we leave it up to the motorists to make their decision as to whether it's safe or not. So,
Yeah, it's,
Can I ask?
it's actually no different than Burke's Liquor, because it's right here.
Yeah.
Can I ask,
Why is there a
Dave,
traffic expert?
would you mind giving us your thoughts on this?
Sure. Not disagreeing with anybody on their notes or anything, but on my notes from the December meeting, I did have a note, make both curb cuts no left turn. I just did to have that in my notes. That's number one. Number two, I think the point that the board member made as far as the way normal people who come here often, not just the one person that's for the first time, they're going to find the most convenient way to do it. And when I read the traffic report, my assumption was that a lot of the traffic coming to this site is going to be going on Sparta Avenue. They're going to make a right into here. They're going to get their bagel, their coffee. They're going to leave on the Woodport Road exit and continue on down to 15 and go to work. So it's going to be a large percentage, I think, of natural progression to the right, if you will, and alleviate a lot of the situation that we're talking about. And if you run into problems making the left, I think, quite frankly, unfortunately for the applicant, they might use a different facility, that's all. The concern I do have, though, and I think it's something for the DOT to look at, is what Mr. Scott brought up. If you're coming out of the Sparta Avenue exit and you want to make that left, we had a similar situation, and I'll tell you where it was, over in Hampton Township by the Lowe's. If you're looking at 206 at the intersection of Cherry Lane and the Town Center Drive that goes into Lowe's, there was a dentist office right on the corner, and now it's an urgent care. And when they went and got the access permit for that driveway, the DOT, as I recall it, required on the opposite side of the 206 right-of-way, a no left turn sign to be installed. And the reason for that was when someone was trying to come out of the dentist driveway and make a left-hand turn, there was a dedicated left-hand turn lane in there to go to Cherry Lane, just like I believe there's a dedicated left turn lane here to make the left onto Main Street. And you couldn't see through all that traffic to see somebody coming on Sparta Avenue from the jug handle. And by the time you pulled out, basically, if you had the gap across two lanes of traffic, all of a sudden, boom, here comes that car, and you weren't prepared for it. So that's the concern I have from a safety standpoint. I would be surprised. We did have another application in Newton, right by the intersection of East Clinton Street and 206, right by the County Seat Restaurant. And someone on the northerly corner wanted to talk about putting a driveway in a very similar situation. There's vacant land there right now. And it was a situation where the DOT said, we don't want you to come out there because you got to cross those two lanes of turning traffic, one going straight, one making a left-hand turn. But if they're queued up, you can't see through all those cars and know that until the last minute, if you will, or last second, that they might have a potential conflict with a vehicle going north on 206. So from that standpoint, I'm concerned about somebody getting into a fender bender doing that. I think most people will probably, as I said before, make the right in, get their bagel and coffee, and make the right out into Woodport Road. And I know a lot of facilities like a traffic signal, because if you were going to make a left and go back around, if I was driving it, I go down to the jug handle and go around. Might take a few more seconds or a minute more or whatever, but it's a safer maneuver. So that's how I would handle it. And those were my concerns.
I appreciate that, Dave. I mean, I know personally that I'm probably not the most attentive driver when I have my new coffee and my hot bagel, cream cheese on it. And I'm coming in.
Mark, you're making me hungry. Stop it, please.
So, all right. I'm going to give everybody else a chance if there are any other issues in there, but one way to resolve it is the one way. Oh, no, no, no. No, we didn't hear from everybody with any other issues. We just got as far as Mr. Scott. Mr. Bleakley.
No, I think Mr. Scott covered all the issues I was concerned about.
Okay. Mr. Otto.
I just want a bagel.
Ms. Luciano.
I do have a quick question. And it's not about car traffic, it's about foot traffic. In this particular area, you are in town center, and I see this generating a lot of foot traffic in the sense that you're gonna have people who work for the post office or people who work for the hair salon kind of walking into this space. And I'm just trying to figure out where the safe walkways are here for pedestrians potentially coming in and grabbing their stuff. And
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. There's a number of offices, other businesses in the neighborhood. I think probably the most likely connection would be to make a striped aisle that runs from the sidewalk on Sparta Avenue to connect with the striped aisle next to the handicap space, and that lines up with the front door of the bagel shop. There's not as obvious a connection coming from Mohawk Avenue, but you're going to have to more or less walk the same path anyway, so I think that connection would be sufficient. And there's no issues with grading because of the fact that we're requesting that waiver for the interior curb.
thank you.
I have a question. In the parking lot, there's not going to be any curbing, right, up against the sidewalk?
Correct.
Right. So, and I know that there are a lot of people, and will be even more, walking along the sidewalk. But shouldn't there be like a bar or something in, as a head for each of the parking spaces?
I think they did say they were going to have wheel stops.
Yeah, wheel stops.
Is that what they're called? Wheel
Yes,
stops?
concrete wheels. That,
They're about, what, 4 feet or?
about 6 feet long or
About 6
so.
feet long,
Yeah.
okay, great.
I'm sorry, where is that? At the right-of-way area?
There's concrete wheel stops all along the front of the parking spaces, the 10 spaces that, 13 spaces
Right.
rather, that face the building and the 3 that face Mohawk
Is
Avenue.
that going to provide for like a 2-foot overhang?
Yes.
So you have a 9 by 18 plus a 2-foot overhang.
Well, the way it's shown now is it's 9 by 18, but the wheel stops are set 2 feet into the parking
Okay.
space, so the 18
Okay.
includes the
I was trying to
overhang.
help you there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could modify it for the parking spaces along Mohawk Avenue. We couldn't do it with the ones that face the building because then you'd be onto the sidewalk that runs around the perimeter of the building.
Okay. Mr. Day.
No, questions are answered. Thank you.
Mr. Zimmerman.
I'm all set.
Excellent. Mr. Good.
Yeah, I'm good. I
Okay,
said my
I have
piece.
one more then. I am still concerned about the one-way because you mentioned in other places, shopping centers, et cetera, people are pulling out and going in every other direction, which is true, but they are not coming in asking for a variance or a waiver from 24 feet to 20 feet. So you've cut out 4 feet. So I'm not sure that logic applies, and
The 20 feet has nothing to do with the two-way flow of traffic.
well, it has to do with backing out, where I was
20
concerned somebody's pulling this way, somebody's pulling that way.
Yeah, the 24-foot requirement is just for the backing in and out. 20 feet is more than enough for two cars to go in opposite directions. You know, again, I don't see a particular safety issue with it. The cars are gonna, to some limited extent, utilize that existing public right-of-way along Sparta Avenue, the same as they had been when it was a gas station. And, you know, with the infrequent number of times that it happens and the low volume of pedestrians there when the bagel shop is busy, I don't see a significant safety concern associated with that. You know, if you had one-way traffic, then the issues of recirculation throughout the surrounding roadway network or throughout the area to the south of the property would come more into play. And that was one of the objections that we had, or I had from a traffic perspective to limiting the turning movements at the driveways. You know, so again, I don't see an issue with the circulation.
Any more?
I have another question, and maybe it's for Mr. Aller, I'm not sure. So if we were to make a decision and we find out 6 months later that we made the wrong decision, there's all kinds of accidents here. Do we get another bite at the apple? What course of action is there?
Yeah, you don't get another bite at the apple. You get, once this is approved and it goes through DEP approvals, if it were approved with no left turns, or, I'm sorry, without, I hate to
Whatever
use it
the
a double
restriction is,
negative,
right,
but
yeah,
yeah.
sure.
So, however it's approved, it's approved. The only way you get another bite, so to speak, at the apple is if they came back to modify the site for something.
Had a similar issue with Starbucks, if you recall, when we had all of the
The queuing out into the parking
queuing
lot?
out into the Route 15, and then they pretty quickly resolved it.
Okay.
If I may ask, has the applicant had any pre-application meeting with the DOT? Not yet?
Yeah, if there are no more questions from the dais, I'd open it to the public.
Sorry, may I ask a
Oh,
question?
yes, of course.
You'd mentioned that, Chairwoman, that you'd like to see the one-way area. Which direction would it be one way?
I would say coming in from Sparta Avenue, where those employee cars are going to be with the signage, so that would,
So it would be going.
and then go out toward Woodport and make a right on Woodport. And if they want to go around the jug handle further left, they could do that, or just continue straight.
So if the one-way direction is from Sparta Ave towards Woodport, what happens if someone pulls in from Woodport and then there's no parking spaces in those 6 and they want to go into the parking? The one-way arrow would be telling them they can't go that direction, right?
Right, they would have to go in the other way.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
Well, they would have to, if they were coming in from Woodport and there's no parking, they'd have to K-turn out and get back off of Woodport and then go around to get to the Sparta Ave entrance. So it could create more of a hazard. If there's no parking in those 6 spaces off of Woodport,
They would just go out.
they would have to K-turn out because the one-way direction to Sparta Ave, you're saying is a one-way restriction from Sparta Ave to Woodport.
Come in Sparta Ave and you go out Woodport.
Yeah,
So you
so-
can't go in Woodport. You can only go in
Woodport has a
Sparta
two-way,
Ave.
has a two-way direction, right? There's a curb cut off of Woodport.
We haven't even discussed coming in off of Woodport. If
You
you're-
could technically come in off of Woodport.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that my preference would be to go in Sparta Avenue and out Woodport, period.
Oh, so it'd be a
Period.
one-way restriction throughout,
Uh-huh,
even in the 24
uh-huh,
lane?
uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But he testified that that would make more.
And I
more work.
appreciate, again, the board's concerns, that we can, that's a condition we absolutely cannot agree to. It's a fledgling business, we're putting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into this business, and if, that'll be the death knell. I mean, it's just gonna kill us. We need customers, and the less convenient it is, within reason, for a customer to go there, they're not gonna go. I mean, we're not talking big profit margins on bagels and coffee. You know, we're not selling diamond bracelets.
And I wasn't suggesting, I was just trying to work through the exercise of figuring that out.
Really trying to impress upon the board.
And DOT may not see it, even if we did impose that, DOT may see that as a non-starter either. So I just wanted to work through the exercise of understanding. I wasn't quite sure what you'd meant before. There are a number of, I guess when we go through, if we go through conditions, there are a number of things that have happened kind of on the fly here. And at the last hearing about plan changes, whether it be signage or restrictions on certain things or whatever, including the landscaping and such. So I don't know how, I know the signage, we kind of spoke that would go to the minor site plan committee as a separate application in the future for review. But things like landscaping and stuff, I just want to, if it does come to conditions, it would be easier if the board spelled out that they allowed Mr. Simmons or myself or both of us as part of resolution compliance to okay certain things, like the planting schedule and stuff like that, just because things have gone on the fly. So just keep that in mind. And then I don't think I have anything else at this moment. Thank you.
Mr. Simmons, anything else?
You know, I just throw something out. I don't know if the board would want to entertain this, or Mr. Aller, if he'd want to go along with something like this, or the applicant. If the board was inclined to conditionally approve this, what I've seen in a couple other boards is they'd authorize the board attorney to prepare a favorable form of resolution. And in the next month's time, which is when it would come back for adoption, the applicant could get in contact with the DOT to find out for sure what restrictions they are or aren't going to put on this particular site. That way you don't lose a lot of time, and that way the board knows and the applicant knows just what the restrictions would be from the DOT standpoint. Just trying to help you move it along and find out, so everybody knows by the time you actually vote on the application, you know what the restrictions would be in all likelihood from the DOT.
Conditions and, all right, that's a
We could
very
do
good
that. So
idea.
if we get to that, the motion would be just to prepare a resolution of approval for consideration by the board at the next meeting or next month's meeting. And then, as Dave said, in between, the applicant can try and get some comment back from DOT.
In the same spirit, I would just, I don't know if Ms. Dunbar would agree, but like the landscaping, to me, it's mostly impervious. So we're talking about plantings in pots and areas around signage. I mean,
I think they're reclaiming the impervious coverage, right? They're reclaiming it, and hopefully it'll be green
yeah.
soil.
I mean, like, I assume that they're gonna want it to look good. They have an area under the sign. I don't want to delay them on the landscaping.
Oh, they have to go through resolution compliance anyway.
Okay.
So if this is looked favorably upon and approved by the board, Dave usually handles it, but whatever the resolution conditions are, their updated plans will have to be checked before they can get a full approval and get their building permits. So it's not like it's going to hold it up. They're going to have to provide it
Okay.
anyway.
All right, thanks.
Just one more quick thing I'm thinking of now. You mentioned that there were going to be plantings along that wall next to Burke's, but I had asked about that last time and was told the plantings could not be there and that it was going to be a wall.
There's an area of grass shown at the southwest corner of the property. Next to that wall, we could put some low plantings in that area. I don't, to be honest, I don't know how much benefit that would be, because that would be pretty well screened no matter what direction you were approaching from. So it may make the most sense to leave that as grass. The better location would probably be adjacent to the Mohawk Avenue driveway, because you can see that as you come around the intersection if you're coming from the north, if you're stopped at the light heading north, if you're at the jug handle, so that's a lot more visible. The other location next to the liquor store, is pretty well screened by the two buildings.
All right, public?
Hi, do I need to swear in?
Oh, there.
Yes, you do, sorry. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
And your name, please?
Jennifer Derrick's Tap into Sparta. Sorry to keep beating the traffic drum, but there is the issue of the left turn in from Woodport Road. There's significant mitigation. Ernie was talking about this to stop a left-hand turn at that traffic light, and this driveway, this curb cut going in is feet off of the corner. The big sweeping turn, the big sweeping curve to open up the sight lines was part of the mitigation, as well as the restrictions on the right on red to, as Ernie already talked about, you have the jug handle so that you're not making lefts at that close to the corner. You're just about making a left in the intersection. That's something that people are not expecting, first of all, and it's already, as I said, it's a long-standing mitigation. To talk about it as it was a gas station, I don't know that, Ernie, more than 20 years ago, was it a gas station? Prior to that, I mean, subsequent to that, it was a service station for a few years, and then it's been closed for just about 20 years.
Yeah, it was a gas station probably in the 60s, 70s, maybe into the 80s.
Right.
Then it became just a transmission repair facility with no.
So there's
pumps.
no experience by just about anybody driving that intersection that there was ever traffic there. It's been a paved lot for almost 2 decades. So the consideration, I appreciate the difficulty that it presents, but safety, we see a disaster up at North Village because safety wasn't really as considered as it should be. Here we have the opportunity to look at a situation that is already being tightly mitigated to stop a left turn at that corner, and you're just asking for the same situation to be allowed by allowing a left turn from Woodport Road.
Thank you. Do you have any other witnesses?
We do not, Madam Chair. If I may briefly, Mr. Simmons' suggestion on the conditional resolution of compliance. We're absolutely more than willing, and we will reach out to the DOT. I just know from experience, I'm almost positive we're not going to get a response from the DOT within 30 days. So I just don't want the resolution, and I don't know how Mr. Simmons intended that resolution and the DOT interaction to work vis-a-vis the resolution that this board hopefully will be approving. But we will represent that, and we'll provide proof to the board that we'll reach out regarding the ingress and egress from the site to the DOT. I just can't commit to the DOT giving us a response within the 30 days. Just wanted to be clear about that.
Mr. Aller, do you have any?
You know,
Comments on
the odds of them getting an answer in 30 days is probably slim. I probably agree with that, you know. So you could just do, we'll just do a regular resolution, could bring it to a vote, put in, have some discussion as to what you want that condition to be. Either, no left turn onto Woodport or both entrances, or timed for one. I think the board needs to have some discussion for that.
Ernie, can I ask a question? So you're coming through the jug handle, and we've got 2 lanes at that stop sign. You got left only, or straight, or right. Okay, but 90% of the traffic is going straight up Sparta Avenue, west. Okay. So someone comes through there, and they say, I want to get a bagel, and I want to go left into the bagel store. I know I got the name wrong, but they want to go left into the bagel store. That really isn't, is that 2 lanes there?
2
Or-
lanes.
That is 2
there's a-
lanes.
yeah,
So
there's a-
cars are going to be able to get around that, and there won't be a backup into the intersection. Right? What if I want to make a left-hand turn, but all the traffic is queued up in the left, go at the light? And traffic starts to back up.
won't be, you'll either have to stop there and wait for the traffic to go through the light.
But you're cruising down, Woodport Road or Mohawk Avenue Road, and you go past the post office and you go through that light, and there's this traffic there. It's just backed up. And you're trying to make a left-hand turn into the bagel store.
Sure which direction you're coming from
Okay,
now.
I'm sorry.
I'm
I mean, if
just
you-
pulling into the post office and walking across the crosswalk. I thought.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Mark, I see, I understand what you're saying when you're coming out of the junction and
Oh, there's no.
heading towards,
Yeah,
Burger
from this side.
King,
It's
you
not
know,
to go around
basically.
you here.
You want to make a
If
left,
you're gonna make a left, you're gonna have to cross
'Cause there's-
2 lanes of
there's that
traffic.
narrows
which
up
could be
here.
stopped,
You have to-
sitting there stopped.
Should be sitting there stopped.
So now you're backing up.
If that's
and
the case,
shoving
you're
them.
gonna have to stop with your blinker on and wait to make a turn. Or, as you said, pull into the post office parking lot and walk across the street. You know, I mean, those are decisions you have to make. Again, it depends on the traffic at the time of day. There are times when the traffic is very heavy there, there's times when the traffic is light. People gotta make their own decisions, you know, that's the virtue of,
I keep trying to
you know,
figure out
the center of
if
town
they're
traffic.
able to-
You know, that's all we're trying to, you know,
but it
you
doesn't
know,
really do anything.
make the best case
No, that's
scenario
what I'm saying.
out of there. And I do believe
The way
that
that they could
the
just grade it.
proposal by the engineer is
Combined
a
site,
valid
because
one
that's
of
what TC's using.
that entrance exit on Woodport
I
Road
know there's a grade.
should not allow a left-hand turn. It's just too short towards the intersection. That has to be a right turn only, and I 100% agree with that. The other one, I think could be left to the decision of the motorists.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
So can I just review some of the, there were a handful of conditions that the board talked about. I want to make sure we're on the same page. So the monument sign, assuming there's a motion of approval, the conditions to consider are that the monument sign would be presented as a minor site plan to the minor site plan committee another time. And we talked about the wall signs also, doing that the same way, right? Okay, so initially, he won't have a sign. If he opens before he gets back here, he's not going to have a sign. I just wanted to point that out, right?
By the time they get it ready, they could apply to
I
the
don't know.
minor site plan.
Yeah, minor site plan here is pretty, like, quick,
Pretty
right?
quick.
We
Okay.
meet right before.
So
these
the
meetings.
wall signs and the monument sign, same condition. Okay. The light fixtures, the applicant would use the same fixtures as are on Sparta Avenue in accordance with the spec that he would get from the township engineer. Right. With respect to parking, the 3 parking spaces will be designated for employee parking only, and appropriate signage will be shown on the plan. The landscape plantings will be consistent with the township standards and to the satisfaction of the township engineer and township planner. You're also going to add landscaping at the base of the future monument sign. And this is where I was a little unclear, and at the southerly property line at that entrance exit, right? Okay. But not the westerly property wall.
I mean, I think we're willing to do that, we just don't know how much utility that's going to.
Understood.
To bring to the
Right.
project.
I just want to bring that up to the board if you wanted it on the western property line. Because you have the building's pretty close to the line there, right? That's the side yard. That's at issue, yeah. Okay, there'd be a condition there would be no left turn onto Woodport Road, which is 181, right? Is it Mohawk Avenue there or Woodport Road? or
Woodport Road.
both?
Woodport Road.
Woodport Road,
Woodport
okay.
Road, 181.
Changes.
It does. So, okay, so no left turn onto Woodport Road at any time of day, right? Consistent,
Correct.
right? And the other would be unregulated,
Correct.
Yes.
right? Okay, then that would be all the conditions I had.
I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, can I, sorry,
I think there are a couple more.
that's what I was going to add.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I'm sure I didn't capture the ones from when I wasn't here.
Do you mind, Chairwoman? So some things that I captured from the first meeting, and Dave can add to these too. There's a condenser that's proposed and adjacent to the addition that is agreed upon to be screened. And so that, I think that needs to be shown on the plan. The refuse enclosure was testified that those would be rollout bins, not a dumpster. So those should be shown as on the detail of the plans to be revised.
With the trash, we also said that it has to be kept in a clean and tidy manner.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
So that should be added as a condition. I had another one. Rich captured the planting schedule to be revised. And then there was one other thing, and I'm not sure, I'll have the applicant confirm. I had asked, the plans show a proposed right-of-way line, and I had asked what that was based off of, and I think they said their engineer was working on a title search for the NJDOT dedication. I think that should be provided if they can find the title for the deed for that. It will verify the line.
So, Rich, is there a question as to where the property line is?
I don't think, no, I don't think there is. It's the, so the conversation from December, those of you who weren't here, the calculations that were performed by Adnan were as depicted, not including the right-of-way line. So, but there was, as part of that conversation, a question about whether it was ever formally dedicated. So
Correct.
that's what Adnan is. It's not a question of where the property boundary line is. It's just a question of whether there actually is
A dedication.
a dedicated
Yeah.
right-of-way. So I'll follow up on that.
Okay, so there's no dedication with this application,
Correct.
it's
No.
just if it has happened already.
That's
Correct. Just a verification, basically, of where their property line is up to. That's
Okay.
all I was looking for.
There was one other thing you brought up last time, and that was about the one EV ready space, and you said there was some new regulation, and going to look into that, whether that was required.
They did not,
They didn't have one, but then you went back and forth as to whether this new regulation.
they have
required it.
under 25
25.
spaces, so they are not required to have an EV space.
Okay.
Any others?
Native species, that would be in the.
Yeah, we
Yep.
agreed to that.
Yeah.
The environmental commission's.
Yep, they did.
No issues.
I'm just wondering if you want to include it in the resolution that we did ask the question as far as the site remediation goes. I believe the answer was the former owner is responsible for the site remediation.
That's correct. The Jan DeWitt Corporation, and we did provide to the board correspondence from Applied Earth Solutions Incorporated, which is started this year.
Just so that's clear.
I had nothing else.
Dave, do you have anything that?
No, that's it.
Well,
I'm just assuming that Mr. Aller is going to reference our reports.
Yeah, it's standard, well, I don't know what your standard conditions are. I assume
That's
there
why
are
I bring
some,
it
but-
up.
But they will most definitely be subject to all agency reports that we have. And there's no, from the applicant's perspective, there wasn't anything raised in any of those reports that weren't agreeable? Okay.
And I bring that up because DOT approval, for example, is one of the conditions that I have in there.
Yes, that,
Just so it gets
Sure.
captured.
And so, I guess one other thing, not a condition, is the applicant agreed, there initially were 5 variances related to the signage. They've agreed, basically as part of going to the minor site plan subcommittee, that they will be conforming signs, so that shouldn't be an issue. There is only one variance, which we got testimony from their planner on, which is about the change in impervious. It was over on impervious coverage, they reduced a little bit, but it's still over the coverage allowances. And then there were 5 design waivers, largely related to the parking and driveway configuration.
right, and we heard the testimony on the reduction on impervious coverage, which was C2 variance only, there was no C1 reasons, right? That was all.
I was going to make a motion if we're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
I would make a motion to conditionally approve with a right only on Woodport, and then with
Everything else he
at
said.
your own risk, entering and exiting onto Sparta Avenue.
Well, I think that that's in the.
It's in all the conditions.
Everything that he just said.
Right.
Where the motion, could
So
you?
it'd be subject to all the conditions that we
Well,
just
yeah.
listed, right? As listed, right?
Subject to those conditions, a further condition to make a motion to approve that there would be, just because I don't see it happening, that it would be right on Woodport only, and then, that, I think there's enough space from the intersection, depending on how the wind blows and the time of day and
Well, if we
whatever.
say no left turn, doesn't that mean right only?
Yeah, it would be no left turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm going north on Woodport Road towards Town Hall. And I want to make a left into the bagel station, the bagel store.
I think you can go, you
Now,
can't,
just 20 feet
you
later,
can't exit.
20 feet later, I'm not, it's illegal for me to make a left. But 20 feet now, oh, right?
Huh?
Just 20 feet away from that, I can make a left into a bagel
Reason
store.
the reason, Mark, the reason for that no left-hand turn at that intersection was for all the traffic that was coming down what was Route 15 and all trying to make a left there, and they put the jug handle in. That's the reason for it. When the jug handle was put in, it has to do with the volume of traffic, not traffic turning into businesses or anything like that. That no left-hand turn is there to make people use the jug handle.
So is it an exit only on the
Yeah, it's a
Woodport?
volume issue.
Volume, not safety.
Volume, not safety issue.
You want an exit?
Exit and right-hand turn on.
Make a motion.
Yeah. All right, does that
Okay.
sound good?
I think we have
Is
a
there a
motion
second?
pending, right?
Yes.
Well, so
Second
the
motion?
motion, or revise it, that it's a exit only, right only onto Woodport.
I think you need to check with the applicant.
Well, that was my motion, but okay.
Made a motion?
So it's the conditions that we
I thought it was
went
gonna
through,
say Mr. Oler's taking it.
right?
So, sorry, all right. So,
Would you read
Want me
the
to run down
motion,
the-
please, then?
Sure. So the motion would be to approve the application for site plan approval, variance for impervious coverage, which is actually being reduced by the applicant, right? Although it's still a variance condition because it exceeds what's otherwise permitted. And it would be subject to the conditions that the monument sign and the wall signs be presented as minor site plan to the minor site plan committee. So in other words, they're no longer part of this application. The light fixtures would be the same fixtures as used on Sparta Avenue in accordance with the specification received from the township engineer. With respect to parking, three parking spaces will be designated for employees. Those will be shown on the plan and designated on site by signage. Landscape plantings will be consistent with the township standards and to the satisfaction of the township engineer and professional planner. And by that, township standards, I mean native species, right? Let's see. When they come back for minor site plan for the monument sign, there will be landscaping added to the base of the monument sign. There'll be no left turn onto Woodport Road from the site. The condenser will be screened in accordance with, or to the satisfaction of the township professional planner and engineer. The rollout bins at the trash container, there will be the use of rollout bins in the trash container, and those will be kept in a clean manner. You'll verify where the property line is. Is that, what line are we talking about? Is that a northerly line, southerly line? Just so I know when I look at the plan.
That was a northern.
The westerly
The
line.
westerly line? Okay,
The line along Sparta Avenue.
okay, gotcha. Maybe spacing. And that was it.
Actually,
That
I'm
was all.
glad we're going over that because there are a couple more there. The
Okay.
setbacks, they need the variance for the setbacks.
Yeah,
Setbacks are pre-existing.
it's pre-existing. It's not necessarily a variance because the building's there and they're, you know. I would just note it in the resolution that it's a pre-existing nonconformity.
And the design waivers from the 24-foot wide aisle to the 20 proposed, 9 by 20 parking space to the 9 by 18, one loading zone to 0, sidewalk 4 feet, it's going to be adjacent instead, and no curbing on the avenues. Those were the design waivers that were
everything?
mentioned by Mr. Flynn.
Is that everything?
Everything I had.
All right. And I make a motion that we accept, approve with the conditions as read.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Mark Scott,
The DOT is going to review this.
They will.
Yes.
Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes.
Robert Bleakley,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Ernie Ragstat,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rob Odle,
Otto, yes.
Chairwoman Joan Fern.
Yes. Go. Phew.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's all on the DOT now.
We really appreciate it. We look forward to.
Thank you for hanging
look
on.
forward to-
That's a tough site. Thank you for everything you've
I
done.
appreciate the board's involvement, engagement, and, you know, good questions, honestly. It put us through the ringer.
We do have to have a concern for all the public safety. So,
Look forward to bringing you a good product.
Thank you. We look forward to the bagel.
Thank you. Good luck. Rich, these were, well, that one was not. Those,
No, that's not marked, because that's just what we have in our packet. I assume the board holds on to the exhibits, at least for the appeal period.
they're coming, your Wharton joint.
Yeah,
They're familiar with your product.
yeah.
Yes, I'll take it back to my office.
Had no bearing on their- on their vote.
thing anyway.
Hey, Reg,
Perfect.
here, just shoot me an email, so I have your email, and I'll send you the resolution to look at.
Staten Island.
Okay. Thank you. I want to try to move through this quickly since it's after 10 o'clock. Is there any other board business to be discussed? No?
Thank you.
Okay. Updates, town council, Mr. Scott?
Well, as you all know, we adjust all ordinance 25-06, which was Sparta Amendment PCED Zone Ordinance Section 62, version 2-C. And we all looked at that. That was a important decision that we made. We passed the PDR zone, PDRM2 zone that we discussed tonight. And we also submitted our DCA number, our fourth round number to the state on time last week. Thanks to all the good work of Catherine and Steve Warner. And they've, the number that the DCA had proposed was 427, and we proposed back to the DCA 311. And as I understand it, as long as we continue to comply with the deadlines that are set forth in the fourth round memorandum, that we will get to July, I think it is, or
June 30th is
June
our next
30th.
deadline.
Okay, and if we do that, then this would be our number. Okay.
There's a 1-month period that commenced on February 1st and ends on February 28th, in which any party can object to the township number, whether or not we chose the DCA number or we picked another number like we did. And so we will be advised of if there are challenges to that number, and then there's a 1-month or 6-week period in which those challenges are then under resolve from the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program, or the program. So we'll keep you abreast if anything comes up.
And that's it for,
Thank you.
thank you.
Environmental Commission?
Yeah, I was not present at the meeting. I did look at the Zoom, the YouTube, but the minutes are still being massaged, so I have nothing to report.
I can just add, there was a small celebration. The open space and recreation plan was finally passed, despite you guys stripping the Rossi. And we went over Green Team resolution and talked a little bit about Earth Day, as well as further discussions on the ordinances and resolutions that we were planning for 2025. So the native plants is still in process, trees still in process, dark skies, et cetera. So,
And we have the lead public event coming up in March.
oh yeah, so the speaker series.
Speaker
So,
series, yeah.
That's on the website if you guys want to take a look.
Okay, thank you. The Minor Site Plan Subcommittee, we met tonight, and we approved the January minutes, so they will be included in the packet when, I don't know, will they go out when the board's January minutes go out, which might be a little while, or can we do it sooner?
That would be a question you can email my supervisor. I
Okay, well,
explained,
they'll go out as soon as possible. And I don't think we have anything under resolutions. And then the next thing is minutes, and that's Dory Fox. It was clear to return part-time this week, I believe it was. No, next week?
in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, okay. Nobody tells me anything. But she's cleared, I guess, in 2 weeks, and then her first assignment, part-time, right? She come back part-time in 2 weeks?
She'll be back in the office part-time for a few weeks in 2 weeks, which I explained to you yesterday when we met.
And at that point, I guess her priority is to start working on the minutes.
She's currently working on the minutes from home at the
Well,
moment.
that's what I meant. That's what I was thinking. She was cleared to start working part-time
From home,
from home, so she's working on the minutes right now.
correct,
Okay, and then she'll be back in the office in 2 weeks,
part-time.
part-time. Okay, so we should hope to have some minutes, maybe by the next meeting. All right,
Madam Chair, one quick question. Any news on the master plan subcommittee?
yeah, we are getting to that. Catherine, was very, very busy with the affordable housing, and I wanted to talk to her about dates. We said we were going to talk after this meeting to try to figure out some dates that we can begin to do that. So that's next on the agenda.
Thanks.
Okay. Open to the public. All right, motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.